His gun won't point at me alone. A dark romance novel. Prologue, the first time she couldn't shoot. The crosshairs settled over his heart with the precision of a lover's touch. Kira Volkov's breathing had slowed to the rhythm she'd been taught at 13, 4 seconds in, hold for 7, 8 seconds out. Her heartbeat was a metronome, steady and reliable, 62 beats per minute. Professional, cold. Exactly what 18 years of training had crafted her to be. Through the scope of her Remington MSR, the world compressed into a circle of crystalline clarity. Everything beyond that circle ceased to exist. There was only the target, the distance, the wind, and the mathematics of death. Cade Mercer stood on the balcony of the Emerald Tower Ballroom, 43 floors above the Seattle skyline. The charity gala hummed with wealth and pretension behind him, but he'd stepped outside, seeking air or solitude. He faced the city lights, one hand braced on the marble railing, the other holding a tumbler of what she knew to be whiskey, Blanton's Single Barrel, his preference. She'd spent 3 weeks learning every detail of his existence. The distance was 847 meters. Wind was negligible, just a whisper from the northwest at 4 kilometers per hour. Temperature, 11 degrees Celsius. Barometric pressure, stable. Every variable had been calculated, compensated for, absorbed into muscle memory. Her finger rested against the trigger with the weight of a promise. She could see the fabric of his tailored suit. Tom Ford, charcoal gray, probably cost more than most people earned in 6 months. The fabric stretched across broad shoulders that spoke of hours in the gym, of discipline that matched her own. His dark hair caught the amber light from the ballroom, and even at this distance, even through the technological precision of her scope, she could see the sharp line of his jaw. She'd watched that jaw clench when his second-in-command delivered bad news. Watched it soften almost imperceptibly when an elderly woman at his last meeting had shared photos of her grandchildren. Watched it tighten with barely contained violence when a rival family's representative had made veiled threats. 3 weeks of watching, learning, waiting. 12 clear shots. Not one taken. Alexei would be furious, was already furious, if the increasingly hostile messages were any indication. "The ghost doesn't hesitate," he'd snarled during their last encrypted call. "The ghost completes the contract. What's wrong with you, Kira?" Nothing was wrong with her. She was functioning perfectly, every system operational, every skill honed to a razor's edge. So why hadn't she pulled the trigger? Through the scope, Cade Mercer turned his head slightly, profile coming into sharper focus. His eyes, she knew they were green, the color of forest shadows from the surveillance photos, scanned the cityscape. For a moment, an insane moment that sent ice down her spine, she wondered if he could feel her attention. If somehow, across nearly a kilometer of space and darkness, he sensed the crosshairs painting a death sentence over his heart. Ridiculous. He was just a man, a target. A problem that needed to be eliminated, so the Volkov-Bratva could expand their territory without interference. She'd killed 47 people. 47 lives ended by her hand, her bullet, her blade. Politicians, witnesses, rival gangsters, a journalist who'd gotten too close to the truth, even a judge who'd refused to be bought. Men, women. She didn't discriminate, didn't hesitate, didn't feel. The ghost. That's what they called her in the underworld. The Volkov-Bratva's perfect weapon. Beautiful, cold, efficient. She appeared, completed the contract, vanished like smoke. No evidence, no witnesses, no conscience. Her finger tensed against the trigger, just 3 pounds of pressure. That's all it would take. 3 pounds. And Cade Mercer would drop. His impressive life ended before his whiskey hit the marble floor. Behind him, through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the ballroom, the gala continued its elegant dance of wealth and influence. Women in designer gowns worth tens of thousands, men in suits that cost more than her rifle. They laughed, drank champagne that cost more per bottle than a week's groceries, conducted their subtle negotiations over canapes and string quartets. None of them knew that death was perched in a building across the way, invisible in the darkness. None of them knew that their host, the formidable Cade Mercer, who'd taken over his father's criminal empire at 23 and turned it into something more powerful than anyone had thought possible, was seconds away from his final breath. Cade raised the tumbler to his lips. The motion was smooth, practiced. She watched the whiskey catch the light, amber and gold. Her breathing remained perfect. Her heart rate never spiked. Her hands were steady as stone. But she didn't pull the trigger. A commotion inside the ballroom caught Cade's attention. He turned, and Kira adjusted her scope fractionally to follow the movement. Through the windows, she saw what had drawn his focus. A child, a boy maybe 7 or 8 years old dressed in a miniature tuxedo, had stumbled into one of the servers. The server, a young woman balancing a tray of champagne flutes, went down hard. Glass shattered. Champagne sprayed across marble floors and expensive shoes. The boy's father, a corpulent man Kira recognized as Senator Whitmore, grabbed the child's arm with visible force. She couldn't hear the words, but she could see the rage in the senator's face, the fear in the child's eyes. Cade Mercer set down his whiskey and moved. He crossed the balcony threshold with the fluid grace of a predator, but there was nothing threatening in his approach. He placed himself between the senator and the boy, with the casual confidence of someone accustomed to commanding space. Kira watched through the scope, her finger still on the trigger, as Cade said something that made the senator's face flush darker. She watched as Cade knelt down, this man who controlled half of Seattle's criminal operations, who'd ordered deaths as casually as ordering lunch, and spoke to the terrified child. The boy's fear melted. His shoulders relaxed. Cade said something that made the child almost smile, despite the tears on his cheeks. Then Cade stood, helped the fallen server to her feet with gentle courtesy, and said something to the senator that made the pompous man shrink into himself like a scolded dog. Kira's finger loosened on the trigger. Not enough to lose the shot, just enough to acknowledge what her mind refused to process. She'd watched this man for 3 weeks. She knew his routines, his habits, his preferences. She knew he met with his captains every Tuesday at a restaurant in Pioneer Square. Knew he worked out alone at an exclusive gym every morning at 5. Knew he visited his mother's grave every Sunday, regardless of weather or business demands. She'd seen him order executions with cold efficiency, watched him negotiate deals that would ruin competitors and consolidate his power, witnessed the calculated violence that maintained his empire. But she'd also seen moments like this, small kindnesses that served no strategic purpose, protection extended to those who couldn't protect themselves, a code of honor that seemed antiquated in their world of blood and money. She'd seen him stop his car to help an elderly woman whose grocery bag had torn, spilling contents across a sidewalk, watched him pay off a single mother's hospital bills after overhearing her crying on the phone outside his building, observed him fire a captain who'd gotten rough with a prostitute, making it clear that certain lines weren't to be crossed. "He's not a good man," Alexei had told her during the briefing. "He's a criminal, a killer. He stands between us and complete control of the Pacific Northwest. Eliminate him." Simple, clean, exactly the kind of assignment she'd completed dozens of times before. So why was her finger still on the trigger, pressure never increasing to that crucial 3rd pound? Through the scope, Cade returned to the balcony. He picked up his whiskey, took another sip, and once again faced the city lights. The child incident was already forgotten by the gala attendees, absorbed into the evening's tapestry of minor dramas. But Kira remembered. Added it to the growing collection of observations that didn't fit the simple narrative of target and elimination. Her position was perfect. A maintenance room in an under-construction office building, 4 floors up, window open just enough for the shot. She'd entered through the service entrance 3 hours ago, picked the lock with practiced ease, set up her nest. No security cameras on this floor yet. She'd verified that during her reconnaissance. No witnesses, no complications. The shot was clean. The variables were stable. The contract was clear. All she had to do was pull the trigger. A slight shift in the wind, negligible, barely registering on her internal calculations. She compensated automatically, adjusting her aim by a fraction of a millimeter. Cade Mercer's chest filled her scope. She could see the subtle rise and fall of his breathing, could imagine the heart beneath that expensive suit, beating steadily, unaware that its rhythm was about to be permanently interrupted. She thought about the first person she'd killed. 15 years old, the rifle nearly too heavy for her adolescent frame, but Alexei's hand steady on her shoulder. "Breathe," he'd whispered. "Just like we practiced. He's not a person, he's a target, a problem, nothing more." She'd believed him then. Had believed him through 46 subsequent kills. Why didn't she believe him now? The encrypted phone in her pocket buzzed. Once, twice, Alexei's signal. Checking in. Demanding results. She ignored it. Cade finished his whiskey, set the empty tumbler on the balcony railing. For a moment, he stood perfectly still, and Kira realized he looked tired. Not physically. His posture was still perfect, shoulders straight, but there was something in the set of his features, a weariness that transcended the body. She knew that feeling, had seen it in her own mirror, in the rare moments when she allowed herself to look. The exhaustion of maintaining an empire built on violence, the weight of being what the world needed you to be, rather than what you might have chosen. The isolation of standing at the top of a pyramid built on fear and blood, with no one to trust, no one to share the burden. "You're projecting," she told herself, voice barely a whisper in the empty maintenance room. "You don't know anything about him except what serves the mission." But she'd watched him visit his mother's grave, watched him stand there for 45 minutes, talking to stone. She'd been too far away to hear the words, but she'd seen his shoulders shake once, briefly, before he'd regained control. She'd watched him fire a captain, not for incompetence or disloyalty, but for unnecessary cruelty. "We're criminals, not monsters," she'd heard him say through the listening device she'd planted. "There's a difference." She'd watched him protect a child from a father's rage, risk social capital, to defend a server who'd made a simple mistake. These weren't strategic calculations, weren't political maneuvers designed to maintain loyalty or project strength. They were just human, complicated, real. "He's a criminal," Alexei's voice echoed in her memory. "He's killed dozens. He profits from drugs, from prostitution, from violence. He's no different than us." But he was different. Or maybe she was the one who was different. Maybe 18 years of being the ghost had finally cracked, and she was losing the cold precision that made her valuable. Maybe she was broken. The thought should have terrified her. In her world, broken weapons were discarded, eliminated, replaced with newer, sharper models. Instead, she felt something she hadn't experienced in years, something dangerous and unfamiliar that took her a moment to identify. Curiosity. She wanted to know what Cade Mercer would say if they met, wanted to understand how a man who ordered deaths could show such gentle concern for a frightened child, wanted to solve the contradiction of controlled violence and unexpected kindness. Her finger remained on the trigger, but the pressure never increased. Through the scope, Cade pulled out his phone, read something that made his jaw tighten. He typed a brief response, then pocketed the device and turned to go back inside. This was it, the moment crystallizing into now or never. Once he went back into the ballroom, surrounded by witnesses and security, the shot would be lost. She'd have to pack up, relocate, wait for another opportunity. Extend this assignment that should have been completed 3 weeks ago. Face Alexei's escalating rage, his suspicion, his threats. Risk him sending someone else to complete the contract, someone who wouldn't hesitate, someone who was still a perfect weapon, uncorrupted by dangerous thoughts like curiosity or conscience. Cade's hand reached for the door handle. Kira's finger tensed. The crosshairs centered over his heart. All the variables aligned. The shot was perfect. Clean, professional. She exhaled slowly, completely, emptying her lungs. Cade opened the door, light and music spilling out from the ballroom. Kira's finger left the trigger. She watched through the scope as he disappeared back into the gala, into the safety of crowds and light. Watched the door close behind him, cutting him off from her sight, from her shot, from her purpose. For 30 seconds she remained frozen, waiting for the professional part of her brain to reassert control, to catalog this as a tactical delay, a strategic repositioning. But she knew the truth. She'd had the shot, she'd calculated every variable, she'd been ready, and she'd let him live. "What are you doing?" she whispered to the empty room, to the darkness, to the ghost of the weapon she used to be. No answer came. Just the whisper of wind through the open window, and the distant sounds of a city that didn't know how close it had come to one kind of chaos, or how close she had come to another. With mechanical precision, she began breaking down her rifle, unscrewing the suppressor, collapsing the bipod, removing the scope. Each piece fit into its designated slot in the custom case, foam padding absorbing any sound. Her hands moved through the familiar ritual, but her mind was elsewhere. Replaying the moment, the shot she'd had, the trigger she hadn't pulled, the target who wasn't just a target anymore. 3 weeks of surveillance had taught her Cade Mercer's habits, his patterns, his vulnerabilities. But it had also taught her something she hadn't anticipated, something she couldn't quantify or calculate. She'd learned to see him as human. And once you saw the target as human, once you acknowledged their complexity and contradiction, their moments of kindness amid the violence, once you did that, pulling the trigger became infinitely more complicated. Kira closed the rifle case with a soft click that sounded like a confession. She'd failed, not tactically. She could justify the delay, cite complications, claim she was waiting for a better opportunity. But she'd failed in the way that mattered most. She'd allowed herself to feel curiosity, interest, something she didn't want to name but that sat in her chest like a stone. The encrypted phone buzzed again, Alexei, demanding an update. She looked at it for a long moment, then powered it off without responding. Tomorrow, she'd have to make a decision. Complete the contract and kill the man whose contradictions fascinated her. Or refuse and face the consequences of defying the Volkov Bratva. Neither option felt survivable. But tonight, in this moment, she allowed herself something she'd been taught to suppress 18 years ago. She allowed herself to wonder, what would it be like to meet Cade Mercer as a woman rather than a weapon? To hear his voice directed at her rather than through surveillance equipment? To see those green eyes focus on her face rather than through the sterile distance of a rifle scope? Dangerous thoughts, stupid thoughts, the kind of thoughts that got people in her profession killed. She hefted the rifle case, checked the maintenance room one final time to ensure she'd left no trace, and slipped out into the darkness of the under-construction building. As she descended the stairs, emergency exit signs casting red shadows across her path, Kira Volkov acknowledged the truth she'd been avoiding for 3 weeks. She'd had 12 clear shots at Cade Mercer, and she would have a dozen more. But somewhere between the first surveillance photo and tonight's crosshairs, something fundamental had shifted. She was no longer sure she could pull the trigger. And in her world, hesitation was death. The question was whose death it would be, his or hers. Chapter 1. Collision. The restaurant was the kind of place where silence cost extra. Kira moved between tables with the practiced grace of someone who'd spent 2 weeks perfecting the role of an upscale server. Her hair was different, darker now, a rich chestnut instead of her natural honey blonde, and she wore brown contact lenses that turned her distinctive gray-blue eyes into something forgettable. The uniform was simple black, elegant enough to blend with the restaurant's aesthetic, but plain enough to be invisible. Invisibility was an art form she'd mastered years ago. Tempest occupied the ground floor of a converted warehouse in Pioneer Square, all exposed brick and Edison bulbs, the kind of carefully curated industrial chic that attracted Seattle's elite. The menu featured ingredients most people couldn't pronounce, and the wine list read like a mortgage payment. Cade Mercer ate here every Tuesday at 8:30. Reservation under the name Beckett, always the same corner booth, always with Marcus Chen, his second in command. Which made it perfect. Kira balanced a tray of appetizers destined for table 6, some kind of deconstructed tuna tartare that cost $60 and would leave the customers hungry, and scanned the dining room with peripheral vision. 12 tables occupied, 3 servers working the floor, plus herself, 1 bartender, 1 hostess. The kitchen staff had already been mapped. She knew the exits, the security cameras, the blind spots. She knew that Cade's booth had a direct sightline to the front entrance, but not to the kitchen corridor. Knew that his preferred seat put his back to the corner, giving him a view of the entire restaurant. Knew that Marcus always sat across from him, positioned to watch the entrance. They were careful, professional, exactly what you'd expect from men who'd survived in their business as long as they had. But they didn't know about the server, with the brown eyes and forgettable face. The ghost was very good at being invisible. Table 6, Kira. The hostess, Nicole, 23, working her way through a master's degree in art history, said with a smile as she passed. And Mr. Beckett just arrived. He's at his usual booth. Kira nodded, allowing nothing to show on her face. Her heart rate remained steady, 65 beats per minute. Professional. Controlled. She delivered the overpriced tarte to table 6, a couple who barely looked at her, too absorbed in their own quiet argument, and then moved toward the corner booth with a bottle of still water and 2 glasses. This was the 6th time she'd served Cade Mercer. The first 3 times she'd been cataloging, learning, confirming the intelligence she'd gathered through surveillance. The 4th time she'd planted a listening device in the booth's upholstery, a nearly invisible bug that transmitted to a receiver in her apartment 3 blocks away. The 5th time, she'd realized with creeping unease that she'd been looking forward to seeing him again. Tonight, the 6th time, she was going to get close enough to plant a tracking device on his phone. And maybe, if she was being honest with herself, close enough to understand why she couldn't pull the trigger. Cade sat facing the room, just as she'd predicted. He wore a navy suit, no tie, the top button of his white shirt undone. His dark hair was slightly damp, like he'd come straight from the gym. Marcus sat across from him, scrolling through his phone with the focused attention of someone reviewing important information. Kira approached from Cade's left side, the angle that would allow her to reach across him to fill Marcus's water glass first. Standard service protocol that would also position her close enough to... "Good evening," she said, her voice perfectly modulated. Not too friendly, not too distant. The voice of someone who existed only to facilitate the meal. "Still, or sparkling tonight?" "Still," Marcus answered without looking up from his phone. But Cade looked at her. His eyes, green, darker than she'd thought, almost forest shadows captured an iris, focused on her face with an intensity that made her pulse skip. Just once, just enough to register on the internal monitors that tracked her body's betrayals. "Still is fine," Cade said, his voice a low rumble that she felt as much as heard. She poured Marcus's water first, using the motion to cover her left hand's subtle movement toward her pocket, where the micro-tracking device waited, smaller than a grain of rice, designed to attach to a phone case or slip into a pocket undetected. Then she moved to Cade's side of the booth, the angle requiring her to reach across slightly to fill his glass. This was the moment, the crucial 3 seconds where her heel caught on something, the booth's support leg, her own foot, the universe conspiring, and she stumbled. The water bottle tilted, water sloshed, her hand shot out to catch herself on the table's edge, and the bottle slipped from her grip entirely. Water cascaded across the table in a spreading wave, ice cubes scattered like dice. The bottle hit the floor with a hollow thunk, and Cade Mercer moved. He was fast, faster than the surveillance had suggested, faster than someone his size should be, rising from the booth and catching her arm before she could fall completely. His hand wrapped around her wrist, firm but not painful, and suddenly she was pressed against the table's edge, his body a solid wall of heat behind her. "Careful," he said, and his voice was closer than she'd expected, close enough that she felt the word against her ear. Every instinct she'd honed over 18 years screamed at her to move, to slip the grip, to create distance, to restore the professional space between predator and prey. But she froze. His hand on her wrist was warm. She could feel his pulse through the contact point, steady and slow. Could feel the calluses on his fingers that spoke of gym work and violence. Could smell his cologne, something dark and cedar-touched that cut through the restaurant's carefully curated ambiance. And beneath all of that, she could feel him studying her, not just catching her, not just preventing her fall, looking at her, really looking. "I'm so sorry," she managed, injecting the right amount of embarrassment into her tone. "I don't know what. The floor must be." "The floor is fine," Cade said, and there was something in his voice that made ice slide down her spine. Not accusation. Not quite. But awareness. Like he'd just recognized something he'd been half expecting. He released her wrist slowly, deliberately, his fingers trailing across her skin in a way that could have been accidental but somehow wasn't. Kira stepped back, retrieving the water bottle from where it had rolled under the booth. Her hands were steady. Years of training saw to that. But she could feel something shifting in her chest. A warning. A recognition. He knows. The thought crystallized with the clarity of a scope's crosshairs. He knows who you are. "Let me get a towel," she said, her voice perfectly level. "And I'll bring fresh water. Again, I'm so—" Kira, was it? Cade interrupted, and the way he said her name, her cover name, the one on her fake ID and employment records, made her meet his eyes. Mistake. His gaze was intense, focused with the kind of attention that dissected and cataloged. She'd seen that look before, through her rifle scope, when he was negotiating deals or assessing threats. The look of someone who missed nothing, who processed information with ruthless efficiency. "Yes," she said, "I'm really very sorry about." "How long have you worked here?" he asked. The question was casual, but his eyes weren't. 2 weeks, 3 days. "About 6 months," she lied smoothly. "I usually work the lunch shift, so I wouldn't have seen you before." He nodded slowly, like she'd just confirmed something. "But you've served me before. 5 times now." "Not 6. 5. He'd been counting. "Have I?" She manufactured confusion, a slight crease between her eyebrows. "I'm sorry. I serve a lot of—" "You're very good at it," Cade continued, still watching her with that predatory focus. "Service. The kind of good that comes from careful training, professional attention to detail." Marcus had finally looked up from his phone, his dark eyes moving between Cade and Kira with visible confusion. "Boss, the water's not that big a—" "Marcus," Cade said, not looking away from Kira, "check the booth. I think I dropped my phone." It was an obvious lie. His phone was in his jacket pocket. She could see the outline. But Marcus was too well trained to question. He slid out of the booth, making a show of checking under the table and seats, which left Kira standing there, trapped in Cade Mercer's attention, with water soaking into the expensive tablecloth and her cover story developing cracks she could feel spreading. "I'll get a towel," she repeated, taking a step back. Cade's hand shot out, not grabbing her, not quite, but landing on the table's edge directly in her path. A barrier, a statement. "You're very familiar," he said quietly. "Have we met somewhere else, before the restaurant?" "I don't think so." Kira kept her voice level, her expression politely confused. "I have one of those faces, I guess. People often think—" "No." Cade shook his head slightly. "You really don't." The way he said it made her breath catch, because there was something in his tone, not threat, not even suspicion exactly, something else, something that sounded almost like recognition, like he'd been waiting for her to appear, like he'd known she would. "Found it," Marcus announced, straightening up with Cade's phone that had definitely not been under the table. He shot Cade a look that clearly said what the hell is going on, but remained silent. Kira seized the moment. "I'll go get that towel. And fresh water. Be right back." She turned and walked, not too fast, not too slow, toward the kitchen corridor. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to abandon the mission, to get out before whatever was happening spiraled further out of control. But she'd been trained better than that. She pushed through the kitchen doors, grabbed a towel from the server station, and allowed herself exactly 3 seconds to close her eyes and regulate her breathing. He knows. Or he suspects. Either way, the mission had just become infinitely more complicated. When she returned to the booth, Cade and Marcus were seated again, speaking in low voices that cut off the moment she approached. She cleaned up the water with professional efficiency, brought fresh glasses, and took their orders without incident. Cade ordered the halibut. Marcus chose the ribeye. Both ordered their drinks without consulting the menu, familiar with the restaurant's offerings. Normal, routine. Except that every time she glanced at their booth for the rest of the service, she found Cade watching her. Not constantly, not obviously, just watching. Like a predator studying prey. Or like prey trying to understand the predator stalking them. She couldn't tell which. At 9:40, they finished their meal. Cade paid in cash. He always paid in cash. And left a generous tip that made Nicole, who handled the checkout, practically glow. Kira was clearing table 8 when they stood to leave. She didn't look directly at them, but she tracked their movement through peripheral vision. They headed toward the exit. Then Cade stopped, turned, walked directly to where she stood, Marcus trailing behind with barely concealed confusion. "Kira," Cade said, and again that sense of him tasting her name, testing it. "The spill earlier, that was my fault. The booth leg was sticking out." It absolutely had not been. "Oh, no, it was," she began. "I insist." He pulled out his wallet, extracted $200 bills, and set them on the table she'd been clearing. For the trouble. $200 for spilling water. For a mistake that hadn't been his. It was absurd. Excessive. And it meant something. Some message she couldn't quite decode. "That's really not necessary," Kira said, "because that's what a normal server would say." "I insist," Cade repeated. Then he did something that made her heart stop entirely. He smiled. It wasn't a pleasant smile, wasn't warm or friendly or reassuring. It was the smile of someone who just won a chess game their opponent hadn't known they were playing. "You're very good at your job," he said quietly. "Professional, careful, attentive to detail." His eyes held hers. "I appreciate that in people who work around me. Loyalty and competence are rare commodities." Each word felt weighted, layered with meaning she was supposed to understand. "Thank you," she managed. "I'm sure we'll see each other again," Cade said. "Soon." Then he turned and walked out, Marcus following, leaving Kira standing there with $200 and the certainty that everything had just changed. She finished her shift on autopilot, cleared tables, processed orders, smiled at customers. The perfect server. But her mind was elsewhere. Replaying the conversation, the way he'd looked at her, the things he'd said. "I appreciate that in people who work around me." Work around him. Not work for him, around him. Like he knew she'd been circling, watching, waiting. At 11 she clocked out, changed in the staff bathroom back into jeans and a dark jacket, and left through the kitchen exit as she always did. The alley behind Tempest was poorly lit, lined with dumpsters and delivery crates. She'd walked this route 12 times before without incident. But tonight felt different. She was halfway to the alley's mouth when she heard the footstep behind her. One footstep, deliberate, meant to be heard. Kira spun, hand moving to the knife in her jacket pocket, body already shifting into combat stance. Cade Mercer leaned against the brick wall 15 feet away, hands in his pockets, expression unreadable in the shadows. "Hello, Kira," he said. "Or should I call you the ghost?" The world contracted to a pinpoint. He knew. Not suspected. Knew. Her hand tightened on the knife. Calculating distance. Angles. Probability of success. He was bigger. Probably stronger. But she was faster, better trained in close combat. If she moved now, struck hard and fast. I wouldn't, Cade said calmly, as if reading her thoughts. Marcus is on the roof with a rifle. Not a very good rifle. He's more of a handgun man. But at this range, he'll hit you even with subpar aim. Kira's eyes flicked upward, catching the subtle shift of shadow on the roofline. He wasn't blinking. What do you want? She asked, her voice steady despite everything. Cade pushed off the wall, taking a single step closer. Just one. Enough to close some distance, but not enough to seem immediately threatening. The same thing you want, he said, to understand why you haven't pulled the trigger yet. The words hit like a physical blow. He didn't just know she was the assassin sent to kill him. He knew she'd had the shots. Multiple shots. He knew she'd failed. You've been watching me for 3 weeks, Cade continued, his voice carrying easily in the quiet alley. 12 clear opportunities. The gala balcony, the gym, my morning run, the cemetery. His head tilted slightly. My mother's grave. That was bold. I almost respected it. Kira said nothing, calculating, planning, looking for the escape route that was rapidly closing. And then you got creative, Cade said. The listening device in the booth. Very good work, by the way. Nearly invisible. I had to have my tech guys sweep twice before they found it. He smiled, that same predatory expression from the restaurant. The server disguise. Following me into my territory instead of keeping distance. That takes either courage or desperation. You don't know what you're talking about, Kira said, buying time. I'm just a... You're a weapon, Cade interrupted. The Volkov Bratva's ghost. 47 confirmed kills, probably more that never got confirmed. You're 26 years old, trained from childhood, and you've never failed a contract. He paused. Until me. The silence stretched between them, heavy with implication. So here's what I'm curious about, Cade said, taking another step closer. Why? What makes me different? What made you hesitate? I didn't, Kira started, but the lie died on her lips. Because he already knew the truth. And somehow, standing in this alley, with a rifle trained on her from above and nowhere to run, she found she didn't want to lie. I don't know, she said finally. The admission felt like removing armor, dangerous, exposing. Cade studied her for a long moment. Neither do I, he said quietly. I've known you were following me since the 3rd day. I've had a dozen opportunities to eliminate you. Clean shots, no witnesses, simple. Her breath caught. Why didn't you? His smile turned into something else, something almost vulnerable. That, Cade said, is the same question I keep asking myself. He took one more step, close enough now that she could see the details the scope had never quite captured. The faint scar along his jaw, the darker green ring around his irises, the way his pulse beat steadily in his throat, just visible above his collar. So here's what's going to happen, Cade said. You're going to walk away from this alley. You're going to go back to whatever apartment you're renting under whatever fake name you're using. And you're going to think very carefully about your next move. Kira's hand remained on the knife. And if I decide to complete my contract, then you'll try, Cade said simply, and we'll find out which of us is better. His eyes held hers. But I don't think that's what you're going to decide. You don't know me. No, he agreed, but I've been watching you watch me. And I know hesitation when I see it. Conflict. Something that looks a lot like curiosity. The word hung between them, an accusation and an admission all at once. This is insane, Kira said. You should kill me, right now. It's what any smart person would do. Should, Cade agreed. But we both seem to be having trouble doing what we should. He reached into his jacket, slowly, deliberately, and pulled out a card. Plain white, with just a phone number printed in black. When you decide what you're going to do, he said, offering it to her, call me. I think we should talk. Really talk, not through scopes or listening devices or server disguises. Kira stared at the card like it might explode. Why would I do that? Because you're curious, Cade said. Same as me. Because 3 weeks of surveillance has created something neither of us expected. He held the card out farther. And because neither of us knows what happens next. Against every instinct, every shred of training, Kira reached out and took the card. Their fingers brushed. Just for a second. Just enough for her to feel the warmth of his skin, the calluses that matched her own. Just enough to confirm that the electricity she'd felt in the restaurant wasn't imagination. "Go," Cade said softly, "before I change my mind about being smart." Kira backed toward the alley's mouth, knife still in hand, eyes never leaving his. Marcus's shadow shifted on the roof, tracking her movement. At the alley's edge, she paused. "This changes nothing," she said. "I still have a contract." "I know," Cade replied, "and I still have an empire to protect." "But Kira?" He used her cover name like a caress. "We both know something changed the moment you didn't pull that trigger." She couldn't argue. Didn't want to. So she turned and walked away, Cade Mercer's phone number burning like a brand in her pocket, and the certainty that she'd just crossed a line from which there was no return. Behind her, she heard Cade's voice, quiet but carrying. "I'll be waiting for your call." And the terrible truth was, she knew she'd make it. Chapter 2: The Cat and the Mouse. The apartment was temporary. Everything in Kira's life was temporary. 600 square feet in Capitol Hill, rented under the name Sarah Chen, with forged documents that would pass any standard background check, furnished with items from IKEA and secondhand stores, functional, forgettable, nothing that couldn't be abandoned in 60 seconds if necessary. She'd lived in places like this for 18 years, cities blurred together. Seattle, Portland, San Francisco, Chicago, New York. Different skylines, same isolation. Different targets, same emptiness afterward. Home was nowhere. Home was a concept for people who had the luxury of roots. Kira dropped her keys on the kitchen counter, laminate that was supposed to look like granite but didn't, and pulled out her phone. Not the encrypted one Alexei used to contact her personal device, unremarkable and clean. The card Cade had given her sat next to it. Plain white cardstock, a single phone number in black ink. No name, no context. Just 10 digits that represented a decision she wasn't ready to make. She should destroy it. Should call Alexei, report the compromise, request extraction. Should disappear into the network of safe houses and false identities that the Volkov Bratva maintained across the continent. Instead, she set the card on the counter and stared at it while water boiled for tea. The encrypted phone buzzed. Once, twice, 3 times. "Alexei." Kira closed her eyes, counted to 10, and answered. "You missed check-in." His voice carried the flat affect of someone stating facts, but she could hear the threat beneath. Alexei never yelled, never showed anger. He simply stated consequences and followed through. "I was working," Kira said, switching to Russian. After 18 years, the language felt more natural than English. "The target had company. The target has had company for 3 weeks. You've had multiple opportunities. Not clean ones. The balcony was clean. The gym was clean. The cemetery was clean." Alexei's voice remained level. "I reviewed the surveillance logs. You had 12 clean shots." Kira's hand tightened on the phone. "You've been watching me?" "I always watch my assets. Quality control. Assets. Not people, not even agents. Assets. Tools to be maintained and monitored." "The shots weren't clean," Kira insisted. "Variables I couldn't." "Don't lie to me, Kira Mikhailovna." The use of her patronymic was a warning. "I trained you. I know what clean looks like. I know what hesitation looks like. And I know the difference." Silence stretched between them, crackling with things unsaid. "What's happened?" Alexei asked finally. "Have you been compromised?" "Yes," Kira thought. "But not in the way you mean." "No," she said aloud. "I'm being careful. Mercer is more alert than the intelligence suggested. His security is competent, but not exceptional. You've eliminated targets with better protection. Try again." Kira walked to the window, looked out at the Seattle skyline. Somewhere out there, Cade Mercer was in his penthouse, probably awake, despite the late hour. Probably thinking about the same conversation they'd had in the alley. Probably waiting to see if she'd call. There's increased police presence around his movements, Kira tried. Federal attention. If I eliminate him now, it could draw... The Bratva will handle law enforcement. Alexei cut through her excuses with surgical precision. That's not your concern. Your concern is completing the contract. I need more time. You've had 3 weeks. Then I need another week. The pause was longer this time. When Alexei spoke again, his voice had dropped to the register that meant danger. Come home, Kira. Her blood went cold. What? Come back to Vancouver. We need to talk. In person. I'm in the middle of... The contract is suspended. I'm reassigning it. No. The word came out sharper than intended. I can complete it. I just need... What you need is recalibration. Alexei's tone brooked no argument. You're showing signs of compromise, emotional attachment, hesitation. These are symptoms of an asset that requires maintenance. Maintenance. The word they used when operatives needed to be reminded what they were, what they'd been created for. Kira had seen maintenance, had watched operatives disappear into the compound's basement levels, and emerge days later, hollow-eyed and compliant, empty in a way that went beyond physical exhaustion. I'm not compromised, she said, fighting to keep her voice level. I'm being strategic. Mercer is suspicious. If I move too quickly... If you were being strategic, he'd be dead. Alexei's patience was fraying. You're stalling. Why? Because I've watched him protect a frightened child. Because I've seen him visit his mother's grave and stand there talking to stone. Because he knows what I am, and he let me walk away, and I need to understand why. I'm not stalling. I'm adapting to circumstances. Then adapt faster. Alexei's voice hardened. You have 48 hours. Complete the contract, or I'm sending Yuri to finish it. Yuri, the butcher. A man who didn't do clean shots or strategic planning. Yuri made examples, left messages written in blood and suffering. If Yuri came for Cade Mercer, it wouldn't just be an assassination. It would be a massacre. I can do it, Kira said. 48 hours. I'll have confirmation by then. See that you do. Alexei paused. Kira, you've been my best operative for 10 years. Don't make me regret the investment I've made in you. Investment, like she was a stock portfolio, a piece of equipment with a measurable return. You won't, she said, and ended the call before he could hear the lie in her voice. The apartment felt smaller suddenly, walls pressing in, the temporary furniture and generic artwork choking the air from her lungs. 48 hours. Kira set down the encrypted phone and picked up Cade's card again. She should complete the contract. Finish what she'd been trained to do. Be the weapon Alexei had created from the broken girl whose parents had sold her to pay their debts. That girl was 8 years old, small for her age, malnourished, terrified. She'd cried when her mother handed her over to the men in expensive suits, had screamed for her father, who wouldn't meet her eyes. She'll have a better life with us, one of the men had said in Russian. Better than you could give her. Her mother had nodded, tears streaming down her face, and closed the door. That was the last time Kira had seen her parents. The last time she'd been allowed to cry. The Volkov Bratva didn't tolerate weakness. Alexei had made that clear within the first week. You're nothing now, he'd told her, his hand gentle on her thin shoulder even as his words cut. The girl you were died the moment your parents chose their debts over their daughter. But I can make you into something better, something powerful, something that never has to beg or plead or hope for mercy from people who don't care. He'd kept his promise, transformed the terrified 8-year-old into a weapon, trained her in combat, linguistics, infiltration, taught her to shoot, to kill, to disappear, taught her that emotions were vulnerabilities and attachment was weakness, taught her that she was a tool, and tools didn't have the luxury of choice. For 18 years she'd believed him. But standing in this temporary apartment, holding a card that represented everything she'd been trained to destroy. Kira felt the foundations of that belief cracking. She'd watched Cade Mercer for 3 weeks, watched him conduct business with ruthless efficiency, watched him order operations that would ruin competitors and strengthen his empire, watched him exist in the same world of violence and power that had shaped her entire life. But she'd also watched the contradictions, the unexpected kindnesses, the moments of humanity that didn't serve any strategic purpose. And tonight, in the alley, he'd known exactly what she was and let her go. Why? The question gnawed at her, demanded an answer that surveillance and intelligence couldn't provide. Kira looked at her phone, at the card, at the choice crystallizing before her. 48 hours to complete the contract. Or 48 hours to find out why she couldn't. Her finger hovered over the phone's screen. The number from the card was memorized already. Occupational hazard of a trained memory. But she pulled up the contact screen anyway. This was insane. Calling the target, meeting him deliberately, everything about it violated every protocol she'd ever learned. But protocol hadn't prepared her for this. For a target who saw her coming and chose not to run. For crosshairs that refused to settle. For the electric shock of his hand on her wrist, in a restaurant that made her forget, just for a moment, what she was supposed to be. Before she could overthink it further, she typed the number, saved it without a name, just digits, clinical, and safe. Then she stared at it for 10 full minutes, tea growing cold in the cup beside her. Finally, at 1:37 a.m., she pressed call. It rang once, twice. On the third ring, he answered. I wasn't sure you'd call. Cade's voice was rough, like he'd been sleeping, or like he'd been waiting, hoping, fighting the same battle she was. Kira closed her eyes. I wasn't sure either. But you did. I have questions. So do I. She heard movement on his end, the sound of footsteps on hardwood, a door closing. Where are you? That's not one of the questions I'm answering. A low laugh, more exhale than humor. Fair enough. When do you want to meet? Who said I want to meet? Why else would you call? Because I've lost my mind. Because 18 years of training is unraveling over a target who shows kindness to frightened children. Because you let me walk away and I need to know why. Tomorrow, she said instead. Neutral ground. Somewhere public. The Japanese garden in the Arboretum. 2 p.m. That's not public enough. It's public enough that neither of us can make a move without witnesses. And private enough that we can talk. He paused. I'll come alone. No Marcus on the roof with a rifle. No security hanging back in the trees. I don't believe you. I know, but I'm telling you the truth anyway. His voice softened slightly. Kira, that's not your real name, is it? Does it matter? No, he admitted, but I'd like to know it anyway, when you're ready. The consideration in those words, when you're ready, not if, not now, did something to her chest, made it hard to breathe for a moment. 2 p.m., she repeated. Japanese garden. I'll be there. Cade? The use of his name felt strange on her tongue, intimate. Why are you doing this? Silence on the line. Then, because I think we're both tired of being what other people made us, and I want to find out what we could be if we chose for ourselves. The words hit like bullets. Clean, precise, devastating. Kira ended the call without responding, because there was nothing she could say that wouldn't reveal too much. She set the phone down and realized her hands were shaking. 48 hours. 2 p.m. tomorrow in the Japanese garden. And somewhere in Vancouver, Alexei was making arrangements to send Yuri if she failed. Kira walked to the window and looked out at the city lights. Somewhere out there, Cade Mercer was probably standing at his own window, looking at the same lights, thinking about the same impossible situation. 2 people who should be enemies. 2 people who should have killed each other by now. 2 people who were about to meet in a garden and find out if curiosity was worth the inevitable consequences. She thought about the 8-year-old girl whose parents had sold her, the teenager who'd learned to kill without hesitation, the woman who'd become a ghost, perfect and empty and alone. And for the first time in 18 years, She wondered if there was still something human left beneath all that training and violence. If Cade Mercer could see it. If she even wanted him to. The encrypted phone buzzed again, a text this time from Alexei. 48 hours. Don't disappoint me. Kira looked at the message, at her personal phone with Cade's number saved. At the reflection of her own face in the dark window, a stranger wearing her features, with brown contact lenses and dyed hair, and no idea who she really was anymore. I already have, she whispered to the empty apartment. Then she went to the closet, pulled out the rifle case, and began cleaning the weapon she wasn't sure she'd ever use. Because in 48 hours, one way or another, Kira Volkov would stop being the ghost. The question was what she'd become instead. Chapter 3. The Trap. The Japanese garden opened at 10 a.m., but Cade arrived at 9:30. He stood outside the entrance gates, hands in the pockets of his dark jacket, and studied the terrain with the same attention he'd give to a potential ambush site. Because that's exactly what it could be. The garden occupied 5.5 acres in the Washington Park Arboretum, a carefully manicured landscape of ponds, bridges, stone lanterns, and meticulously pruned trees. Narrow paths wound through bamboo groves, and past carefully positioned rocks that represented mountains in miniature. The aesthetic was deliberate tranquility, every element placed with intention. It was also a tactical nightmare. Multiple entry points. Dense vegetation that could conceal shooters. Elevated positions in the surrounding trees. Limited sightlines. Civilians wandering through, creating both cover and complications. Marcus had called it suicide when Cade told him the plan. You're meeting an assassin in a location she can control, Marcus had said, pacing Cade's penthouse at 7 that morning. An assassin who's been sent specifically to kill you. An assassin who, may I remind you, is exceptionally good at her job. She's had 3 weeks of opportunities, Cade had replied, adjusting his watch, a Tag Heuer that was actually a panic button disguised as luxury. If she wanted me dead through conventional means, I'd already be dead. So instead you're giving her an unconventional opportunity? I'm giving us both a chance to figure out what the hell is happening. Marcus had stared at him like he'd lost his mind. What's happening is you're developing feelings for the woman sent to murder you. That's called Stockholm Syndrome, boss. Except you're not even the hostage in this scenario, which makes it more like reverse Stockholm. Is that a thing? It's not feelings, Cade had insisted. It's curiosity. Right, curiosity. That's why you've been watching surveillance footage of her for 3 weeks like it's a Netflix series. That's why you specifically requested Table 6 at Tempest be kept available every Tuesday even though you usually prefer the corner booth. That's why. Your point is made. Marcus had sighed, running a hand through his dark hair. At least let me position snipers, discreet ones, just in case. No, boss. If I show up with security, she won't trust me, and this only works if there's trust. Trust, Marcus had repeated flatly. With an assassin. With a woman who's had 12 clean shots and hasn't taken one. Cade had met his second-in-command's eyes. That means something, Marcus. I need to find out what. Now, standing outside the garden gates as they opened for the day, Cade wondered if Marcus had been right. If this was elaborate suicide dressed up as strategic thinking. But he'd spent 3 weeks watching Kira watch him, had seen her hesitate, retreat, circle back, had recognized something in her surveillance that went beyond professional assessment. She'd been studying him the way he'd been studying her, not just as a target or threat, but as a person, trying to understand the contradictions, trying to reconcile the violence with the humanity. And last night, in that alley, he'd seen it in her eyes, the same confusion he felt, the same sense that something fundamental had shifted in ways neither of them knew how to navigate. Cade paid the entrance fee and walked into the garden. At 10 a.m. on a Tuesday, the place was nearly empty. An elderly couple examined a stone lantern near the entrance. A man in running gear jogged past on one of the peripheral paths. A woman with a sketch pad had settled near the koi pond. Normal, civilian, no obvious threats. But Kira wouldn't be obvious. He found a bench near the moon bridge, a steeply arched wooden structure painted vermilion that crossed a small pond, and sat down to wait. From this position, he could see 3 of the main paths and had his back to a carefully pruned hedge that would make approach from behind difficult. The morning sun filtered through maple trees, casting dappled shadows across the water. Koi swam lazy circles below the bridge's reflection. The sound of trickling water from a nearby stream competed with distant traffic noise. It was, objectively, peaceful. Cade felt like a drawn bowstring. At 1:47 p.m. he saw her. She wore jeans and a gray hoodie, hair pulled back in a ponytail, large sunglasses hiding most of her face. She carried a small backpack and had earbuds in, the picture of a college student enjoying the garden between classes. But Cade recognized the way she moved, the efficient grace that wasted no motion. The constant peripheral scanning disguised as casual observation. The positioning that kept her hands free and her back to open space. She was good. If he hadn't been specifically watching for her, he might have missed it. She walked past him without acknowledgement, crossed the moon bridge, and disappeared down a path that led deeper into the garden. Cade waited 30 seconds, then followed. The path wound through a bamboo grove, where the stalks grew so thick they created living walls. The temperature dropped several degrees in the shade. The sound of the garden's water features faded, replaced by the whisper of bamboo leaves in the breeze. Kira stood in a small clearing where the path forked in 3 directions. She'd removed the sunglasses. Her eyes, gray-blue again, he noted, the brown contacts from last night gone, tracked his approach with predatory focus. "You came alone," she said, not a question. "I said I would." "People lie." "I don't, not about things that matter." Her mouth tightened slightly. "Everything matters when you're dealing with enemies." "Is that what we are?" Cade stopped 10 feet away, maintaining distance. Close enough to talk, far enough to react if necessary. "Enemies?" "You run the Mercer family. I work for the Volkov Bratva. That makes us enemies by definition." Definitions can be complicated. Not this one, but her voice lacked conviction. Cade studied her in the diffused light. Without the server disguise, without the careful construction of invisibility, she was striking. Sharp features that suggested Slavic ancestry. High cheekbones and a mouth that looked like it rarely smiled. Her body was lean muscle under the casual clothes, the build of someone who trained daily, who treated their body as a weapon to be maintained. But it was her eyes that caught him, gray-blue and haunted, holding depths of experience that didn't match her 26 years. "How long have you been watching me?" he asked. 3 weeks. You know that already." "I mean right now. How long have you been in the garden before you revealed yourself?" A flicker of something. Surprise? Approval? Crossed her face. "Since 9. So she'd been here before the garden even opened. Scoped out positions, planned exits, established control of the terrain. "I'm impressed," Cade said honestly. "Though I did check the stone lanterns for explosives." "I don't use explosives. Too imprecise." "What do you use?" "Whatever completes the contract with minimum collateral damage." Her tone was clinical, professional, usually rifles at distance. Sometimes closer work if the situation demands it. 47 contracts completed, Cade said. "No failures until me." "How do you know my numbers?" "The same way you know mine. Intelligence, research. The difference is I've been researching you for 3 weeks. You've probably been researching me for 3 months. 5. She corrected automatically, then looked annoyed that she'd confirmed it. 5 months. The Volkov Bratva had been planning this assassination for 5 months, and Kira had been studying him for most of that time. "So you know everything about me," Cade said. "My routine, my security, my vulnerabilities. You know I visit my mother's grave every Sunday. You know I go to the gym alone at 5 a.m. You know I have a scar on my jaw from a knife fight when I was 17. He touched the faded mark. "You probably know what I eat for breakfast. Black coffee, scrambled eggs, wheat toast, no butter." Kira's voice remained flat. You read for 30 minutes every morning. Currently, working through Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. You've been on that book for 6 weeks, which suggests you're rereading passages. The accuracy was unnerving, and somehow, coming from her, almost intimate. You're thorough, Cade said. I'm professional. Professional would have pulled the trigger by now. That landed. He saw her jaw tighten, shoulders square slightly. Defensive. I'm being strategic, she said, waiting for the optimal moment. Bullshit. Her eyes flashed. Excuse me. You've had optimal moments, plural. You've had me alone, exposed, vulnerable. You've had clear shots with escape routes planned. Cade took a step closer. You haven't taken them because something's stopping you, and it's not strategy. You don't know what you're talking about. Don't I? Another step. Because I've been doing the same thing. I knew you were following me by day 3. I've had you in my sights, metaphorically and literally, dozens of times. I could have eliminated you cleanly, no repercussions, no complications. Why didn't you? The question hung between them, sharp as a blade. Because, Cade said quietly, I wanted to understand what the hell I was feeling every time I watched you watch me. Kira's breath caught. Just slightly. Just enough for him to notice. You don't feel anything, she said, but her voice had lost its edge. I'm a contract. You're a target. This is business. Then why are we standing in a garden instead of shooting each other? She had no answer for that. Or maybe she did, but wasn't ready to say it aloud. Cade closed the remaining distance between them. Not threatening, not aggressive, just present. This close, he could see the faint scar above her left eyebrow. Could see the tension in her jaw, the pulse beating in her throat. Could see the way her hands stayed loose at her sides, ready to move, to defend, to attack if necessary. You're afraid, he said. I'm not afraid of you. I didn't say you were afraid of me. I said you're afraid. He held her gaze. Of whatever's happening. Of the fact that you can't complete the contract. Of what it means that you're standing here talking to me instead of putting a bullet through my skull. Stop. Of feeling something when you've been trained not to feel anything. Stop. Her voice broke on the word. Cade reached out slowly, giving her every opportunity to move away. His hand settled on her upper arm, gentle, not restraining. The contact sent electricity through both of them. He saw it in the way her pupils dilated, the way her breathing changed rhythm. I've been where you are, he said quietly, trained from childhood to be something specific, taught that emotion was weakness and attachment was vulnerability, told that I was a tool for the family business, not a person with choices. His thumb moved slightly against her arm. It's exhausting, isn't it, being what everyone else made you? Kira's eyes glistened. For a moment, just a moment, he saw past the ghost to the woman beneath. The one who'd been 8 years old when her parents sold her. The one who'd survived 18 years of training that stripped away humanity and left only precision. I don't know how to be anything else, she whispered. Neither did I, and then I met someone who made me want to find out. Her eyes met his. Who? You. The word landed like a confession. Kira stared at him for 3 heartbeats. Then she moved. Not away, not into attack. She kissed him. Hard, desperate, like she was trying to prove something or destroy something, or maybe both at once. Cade responded instantly, his hand moving into her hair, the other wrapping around her waist and pulling her closer. She tasted like coffee and something sweet, honey maybe, and the small sound she made when his tongue touched hers went straight through him. This was insane, reckless. Every tactical instinct he possessed screamed warnings. But God, she felt right, like something he'd been missing without knowing it, like a question finally answered. Kira's hands fisted in his jacket, pulling him down to her height. Her body was all lean muscle and coiled energy, but she was shaking slightly, not from cold. From something else. Fear, need, the collision of 18 years of denial meeting something too powerful to ignore. Cade broke the kiss but didn't pull away. their foreheads pressed together, breathing ragged. "This is a bad idea," Kira said against his mouth. "Terrible idea. I'm supposed to kill you." "I know. You should kill me." "I know. We're both going to die if we keep doing this." "Probably." She laughed, a broken, desperate sound, and kissed him again. This time, slower, deeper, less desperate and more deliberate. Like they were both acknowledging that whatever was happening wasn't going away, wasn't something they could fight or deny anymore. When they finally separated, Cade kept his arms around her. She didn't pull away. "What now?" she asked, her voice rough. "I don't know." "Helpful. You have people expecting you to complete the contract. I have people expecting me to eliminate the threat." He looked down at her. "We're trapped between impossible choices." "There's always a choice." "Is there?" Cade's hand moved to cup her face. "What happens if you refuse the contract?" "If you walk away?" Kira's eyes went dark. "The Bratva doesn't accept refusals. If I fail, they'll send someone else. Someone worse." "Worse than the ghost?" "Worse than me, trying to make it clean." She pulled away slightly, and he let her go. "They'll send Yuri, the butcher. He doesn't do precision kills. He makes statements." Cade knew the name, knew the reputation. Yuri Volkov didn't just eliminate targets, he destroyed them, left carnage that served as warning to others. "How much time do you have?" he asked. 48 hours. Less now. I missed check-in last night, and my handler is losing patience." "Your handler being?" "Alexei Volkov, the Bratva's head of operations." Her voice went flat saying the name. "He's been my trainer since I was 8. Trainer. Not father figure, not mentor. Trainer. Like she was an animal to be conditioned. Cade's jaw tightened. "He's the one who made you into this. He's the one who kept me alive, gave me purpose, made me valuable instead of disposable." But she didn't sound convinced. Sounded like she was repeating words she'd been taught to believe. "Made you into a weapon," Cade corrected. "There's a difference between valuable and human. Maybe I'm not human anymore." "You kissed me like you're human." Color rose in her cheeks, the first time he'd seen her show anything resembling embarrassment. That was a mistake. "Was it?" "Yes. No, I don't know." She ran a hand through her ponytail, frustrated. "I don't know anything anymore. 3 weeks ago, this was simple. You were a target. I was an operative. Completing the contract was just another job." "What changed?" "I watched you," she said. "Really watched you. Not just patterns and vulnerabilities, but you. The way you talked to your people. The way you protected that child at the gala. The way you stand at your mother's grave and tell her about your week, like she can hear you." Her voice broke slightly on the last part. "I started seeing you as a person instead of a problem," she continued. "And once I did that, I couldn't unsee it. Couldn't go back to the simple math of target and elimination." Cade understood completely, because he'd done the same thing. "So where does that leave us?" he asked. "Fucked." She said it matter-of-factly. "If I don't complete the contract, Yuri comes for you, and probably me too. If I do complete it." She looked at him, and he saw genuine pain in her eyes. "I don't think I can." "Then don't. It's not that simple." "It's exactly that simple. You choose." He stepped closer again. "You choose not to kill me. You choose to walk away from Alexei and the Bratva and 18 years of conditioning. You choose to be something other than what they made you. And then what? They'll hunt me, hunt you. Everyone you care about becomes a target." "Let them come." Cade's voice hardened. "I've been building my father's empire for 6 years. Consolidating power, eliminating threats, establishing dominance. You think I can't handle the Volkov Bratva? You don't understand what you're dealing with. Then help me understand. Help me prepare." He caught her hands, held them between his. "Or we can do this another way." "What way?" "We eliminate the problem before it eliminates us." Kira's eyes widened. "You mean?" "I mean Alexei, the Bratva's operational head. Remove him, and the organization fractures. At least temporarily, long enough for us to maneuver. That's insane. He's protected by layers of security. No one gets close to him. No one except his best operative. Cade watched, understanding dawn in her eyes. You have access. You have his trust. You could get close enough to kill the man who raised me? Kira pulled her hands away. To murder the only person who's ever given a damn whether I lived or died? He doesn't give a damn about you, Kira. He cares about your usefulness. There's a difference. She flinched at the harsh truth. If he cared about you, Cade pressed, he wouldn't threaten to send Yuri, wouldn't demand you complete an assignment that's clearly tearing you apart, wouldn't treat you like an asset that requires maintenance when you show the first sign of humanity. How do you... She stopped. You've been listening to my calls. You planted a bug in my booth. I planted one in your apartment. He shrugged unapologetically. We're both professionals. Don't act surprised. Kira laughed. That broken sound again. This is so fucked up. Agreed. Normal people don't handle relationship problems by planning mutual assassination. We're not normal people. No, we're really not. She looked at him for a long moment. You're serious about going after Alexei? I'm serious about protecting what's mine. And Kira? He stepped closer again, close enough that she had to tilt her head back to maintain eye contact. You're mine now, whether you've accepted that yet or not. Her breath caught. That's incredibly presumptuous. Is it? Because you kissed me like you've been thinking about it for 3 weeks. You called me last night when you should have been planning my death. You're standing here having this conversation instead of putting a bullet through my head. His hand moved to her face, thumb tracing her cheekbone. I think you became mine the moment you couldn't pull that trigger. Same way I became yours the moment I let you walk away. This is insane, she whispered. I know. We're gonna get killed. Probably. I've never felt anything like this before. Neither have I. She closed her eyes. When she opened them again, something had shifted. Some internal wall had cracked, and he could see the decision forming. If I do this, she said slowly, if I help you go after Alexei, there's no going back. The Bratva will never stop hunting us. We'd have to eliminate the entire organization or disappear so completely they'd never find us. Or option 3, Cade said. Which is, we take over. Combine the Mercer territory with Volkov operations. Build something stronger than either family alone. He saw the shock in her face. Think about it. Your knowledge of Bratva operations, plus my infrastructure and resources. We could control the entire Pacific Northwest. Create an empire that would make anyone think twice about coming after us. That's ambitious, insane, brilliant, all of the above. But he could see her mind working, see the tactical assessment happening behind her eyes. It could work, if we moved fast, if we hit hard enough to make an example. That's what I do, Kira. I build empires, and you're the perfect weapon to help me do it. She stiffened at the word weapon. Not a weapon, he corrected immediately. A partner, an equal, someone who understands this world because you've survived it. His hands framed her face. I don't want to use you. I want to stand beside you. Tears pricked at the corners of her eyes, the first time he'd seen her come close to crying. Why? She asked, voice breaking. Why do you care what happens to me? I'm a killer, an assassin sent to murder you. Why would you want me for anything except elimination? Because when I watched you watch me, I didn't see a killer. I saw someone who was trapped. Someone who'd been turned into something she never chose to be. Someone who protected a server, who spilled wine and hesitated over shots she'd been trained to take without thought. He pressed his forehead to hers. I saw someone who was still human underneath all the conditioning, and I wanted to know that person. You might not like what you find. I'll take that risk. Kira was quiet for a long moment. Then, I need to think about all of this, about what you're proposing. How much time do you have? 36 hours before Alexei sends Yuri. Then you have 36 hours to decide. Stay the ghost and complete the contract. Walk away and spend the rest of your life running. Or, he kissed her, soft and deliberate. "You can choose to be something new with me." She kissed him back, just as soft, just as deliberate. When they separated, her eyes were clearer, more focused. "If I do this," she said, "if I choose you, I need you to understand what you're getting. I'm damaged. Probably broken beyond repair. I've killed 47 people, and I barely remember most of their faces. I don't know how to be normal or soft or any of the things regular women are. I don't want normal. I want you. You're insane." "We've established that." The corner of her mouth twitched, almost a smile. "Where do you want me to call you when I decide?" "You already have my number." "Private line?" He recited a different number, his personal cell, not the business line he'd given her before. She committed it to memory. He could see her doing it. 36 hours, she said. 36 hours. They stood there for another moment, neither wanting to be the first to leave, to break whatever fragile thing they'd built in this garden clearing. Finally, Kira stepped back. "I should go if Alexei's having me watched." "He is. 2 men on the perimeter. I had Marcus identify them when I arrived." "You said you came alone." "I did. Marcus is handling surveillance from a distance, making sure no one crashes our conversation." Despite everything, Kira smiled, a real smile that transformed her face. "You're a good liar. Only when it matters." "And this matters?" "More than anything." He let her go, even though every instinct wanted to keep her close. "Call me, whatever you decide." She nodded, pulling the hood back up, replacing the sunglasses, becoming invisible again. But before she disappeared down the path, she turned back. "Cade, for what it's worth, you were right." "About what?" "About being tired of being what other people made me. I am so fucking tired." Then she was gone, vanishing into the bamboo grove, like the ghost she'd been named for. Cade stood alone in the clearing for 5 full minutes, memorizing every detail of the last hour, the way she'd felt in his arms, the taste of her mouth, the look in her eyes when she'd almost cried. His phone buzzed. "Marcus, you still alive?" "For now." "And the ghost?" "Undecided." "Boss, if she doesn't go for this plan, if she comes after you—" "She won't. You can't know that." But he could, because he'd seen the truth in her eyes when she'd said she couldn't pull the trigger. They were both trapped in cages built by other people's expectations, both exhausted from being weapons instead of humans, and they'd just found the key to each other's locks. Now they had 36 hours to decide if they had the courage to use it. Cade walked out of the garden into the autumn sunlight and started planning for war. Because one way or another, the next day and a half would end in violence. The only question was whose side Kira would be on when it did. Chapter 4. Consequences. The apartment felt different when Kira returned. Same temporary furniture, same generic artwork on beige walls, same carefully maintained anonymity that could be abandoned in 60 seconds. But now it felt like a cage instead of a hideout. She dropped her backpack by the door and stood in the center of the living room, still feeling Cade's hands on her face, his mouth against hers, his voice saying "You're mine now" with such absolute certainty. The encrypted phone sat on the kitchen counter where she'd left it, silent, waiting. She'd ignored 3 more calls from Alexei during the meeting with Cade. By now, he'd be past impatient and moving into dangerous territory. The kind of territory where operatives disappeared for recalibration and came back hollow. If they came back at all. Kira walked to the window, looked out at the Seattle skyline. Somewhere in one of those buildings, Cade was probably doing the same thing. Planning, calculating, preparing for whatever came next. "We take over," he'd said. "Build something stronger than either family alone." The audacity of it was stunning. The Mercer family and the Volkov Bratva had been enemies for years. Territory disputes, trade route conflicts, the usual power struggles that defined their world. And Cade wanted to merge them. Wanted her to help him do it. Wanted her. That last part was the most incomprehensible. She'd been sent to kill him, had studied him for months, learned every vulnerability, planned his death in a dozen different scenarios. And he'd known. Had known for weeks, could have eliminated her at any time. Instead, he'd let her watch, had shown her the contradictions that made him human instead of just a target, had stood in that garden and offered her something she'd never imagined was possible. Choice. The encrypted phone buzzed. Once, twice, 3 times. Kira stared at it for a long moment, then walked over and answered. "You've been avoiding me." Alexei's voice was flat, dangerously calm. "I've been working," Kira said in Russian, switching to the language of her childhood training. "The target is being cautious. I'm adapting." "The target should be dead. You've had 14 clear shots now." "Yes, I know." Kira kept her voice level. "And if I'd taken any of them, his security would have closed ranks. The Mercer organization would have retaliated. We'd have a war on our hands that the Bratva isn't prepared for." Silence. She could almost hear Alexei's mind working, assessing whether this was legitimate tactical thinking or elaborate justification for failure. "Explain," he said finally. "Mercer has been consolidating power for 6 years. His captains are loyal, his operations are diversified, his security is better than our intelligence suggested." The lies came smoothly, built on fragments of truth. "If I eliminate him cleanly, they'll investigate. They'll find evidence of Bratva involvement, and they'll come after us with everything they have. So I'm creating a different scenario, making it look like internal betrayal. His second-in-command has been questioning his leadership. I've been cultivating that discord. When Mercer dies, it'll look like Marcus made a move for power. The Mercer organization tears itself apart from within, and we walk into the chaos." Another pause, longer this time. "This was not the plan," Alexei said. "The plan was elimination of a threat. I'm ensuring the threat stays eliminated," Kira pressed on. "Give me 72 more hours. I can set up the scenario, complete the contract, and hand you the entire Mercer territory on a platter. I gave you 48 hours. You have," she heard papers rustling, "34 hours remaining, not 72. Then the timeline is tighter, but it's still achievable. Yuri is already en route to Seattle." Ice flooded Kira's veins. "What?" "He left Vancouver this morning. Insurance, in case you continue to show signs of compromise." Alexei's tone held no emotion, just fact. "He'll arrive tomorrow evening. If the contract is not completed by then, he takes over. I don't need. What you need is irrelevant. What you've demonstrated is hesitation. Emotional attachment. Signs of an operative who's lost objectivity." His voice hardened. "I invested 18 years into making you perfect, Kira Mikhailovna. I will not watch that investment corrode because you've developed feelings for your target." The accusation hung in the air like poison. "I don't have feelings," Kira said, but the lie tasted bitter. "I'm being strategic." "Then prove it. Complete the contract within the next 34 hours, or Yuri completes it for you." Alexei paused. "And if Yuri has to step in, you'll come home for maintenance. Am I clear?" Maintenance. The word landed like a physical blow. Kira had seen operatives go through maintenance, had watched them enter the compound's basement levels fighting and emerge days later docile. Empty. The parts of them that made them human carefully excised, leaving only the weapon behind. "Crystal clear," she said. "Good. I expect confirmation of completion by this time tomorrow. Don't disappoint me, Kira. You're my finest creation. I'd hate to have to dismantle you." The call ended. Kira set down the phone with hands that wanted to shake but didn't. Years of training held her body steady, even as her mind spiraled. Yuri was coming. The butcher, a man who made her look gentle by comparison. If Yuri took over the contract, Cade wouldn't just die. Everyone close to him would die. Marcus, the captains. Anyone who got in the way. Yuri didn't do precision. He did carnage. And if she failed to complete the contract herself, she'd be sent for maintenance. The procedure that would strip away whatever remnants of humanity she'd managed to preserve through 18 years of conditioning. They'd turn her into the perfect weapon Alexei had always wanted. No hesitation, no conflict, no choice. No memory of green eyes and a mouth that had kissed her like she mattered. Kira walked to the closet and pulled out the rifle case, set it on the coffee table, and opened it with careful precision. The Remington MSR gleamed in its foam padding, $30,000 of precision engineering. Custom modifications that made it one of the most accurate long-range weapons in existence. She'd killed 32 people with this rifle. 32 lives ended through a scope, at distances that turned humans into targets, faces into abstractions. Could she make it 33? Her phone, the personal one, not the encrypted device, sat on the counter. Cade's number was saved. She could call him, warn him that Yuri was coming, that they had less time than they'd thought. Or she could complete the contract right now, set up across from his penthouse, wait for him to appear at the window like he did every evening around 7, and end this before it spiraled further out of control. Clean. Professional. What she'd been trained to do. Except the thought of aiming at Cade, of putting him in her crosshairs, of pulling the trigger. Her hands were shaking. Kira set down the rifle barrel she'd been holding and stared at her trembling fingers. 18 years. 18 years of perfect control, of steady hands and slower heartbeat and breathing that never faltered. And now she was shaking like a civilian, like someone who'd never held a weapon before. "What's happening to me?" she whispered to the empty apartment. But she knew the answer. She was breaking. The conditioning that had held her together for nearly 2 decades was fracturing. And instead of the horror she should feel, instead of the panic at losing the only identity she'd ever known, she felt relief. The realization hit like a bullet. She didn't want to be the ghost anymore, didn't want to be Alexei's perfect weapon. Didn't want to spend the rest of her life killing people for money and calling it purpose. She wanted to be Kira, just Kira. The woman Cade had seen beneath the training. The woman who could kiss someone and mean it. The woman who had choices instead of contracts. But wanting something and achieving it were different things. Alexei would never let her go. The Bratva didn't release operatives. They used them until they broke, then discarded them. And with Yuri coming, with maintenance threatened, her window for escape was closing. Unless she did what Cade suggested, unless she eliminated the problem before it eliminated her. Kira's mind shifted into tactical mode, the training taking over even as she planned its own destruction. Alexei was in Vancouver. The Bratva's operational headquarters occupied the top 3 floors of a high-rise in the financial district. Security was extensive but not impenetrable. She knew because she'd been part of that security, had walked those floors for years. She knew the guard rotations, knew the camera placements, knew which doors required biometric access and which could be bypassed with the right codes. She knew where Alexei's private office was, where he went when he wanted to work undisturbed. She could get to him, could get close enough to kill the man who raised her. The thought stuck in her throat, because despite everything, despite the conditioning, the manipulation, the threats of maintenance, Alexei was the closest thing to family she'd had for 18 years. He'd pulled her from her parents, debt and poverty, had given her food, shelter, training, had made her valuable instead of disposable. The fact that he'd done it by destroying her humanity was almost beside the point. "He doesn't care about you," Cade's voice echoed in her memory. "He cares about your usefulness." True. Alexei had never shown affection, never offered comfort. Every interaction had been about performance, improvement, utility. But he'd also never abandoned her, never given up on her, even when other operatives failed and were discarded. "Because you were his best investment," a cold voice in her head said. "Because you made him look good. Because you were profitable. Not because you mattered." Kira's phone buzzed, not the encrypted one, her personal device. A text from an unknown number. "Yuri arrives SeaTac 6:40 p.m. tomorrow. Marcus confirmed. You have 28 hours. C. Cade. Somehow, he'd already gotten intelligence on Yuri's arrival, had his people tracking flights, monitoring movements, building the infrastructure to protect what he'd claimed as his. Protecting her. When was the last time someone had tried to protect her instead of use her? The answer was never. Her fingers moved across the screen before she could overthink it. Need to talk. Not phone. In person. The response came within seconds. My place. I'll send address and entry code. Marcus will clear security. Then, whatever you decide, I meant what I said. You're mine now. I protect what's mine. Kira stared at the words, something warm and terrifying unfurling in her chest. She should complete the contract. Should put a bullet through Cade Mercer's head and salvage what remained of her life with the Bratva. Should be the weapon Alexei had spent 18 years creating. But as she looked at the rifle on the table, at the phone in her hand, at her reflection in the dark window, she realized she'd already made her choice. She'd made it the moment she couldn't pull the trigger. Made it when she'd kissed him in the garden. Made it every time she'd watched him be human and felt something shift inside her. The ghost was dead, had been dying for 3 weeks without her realizing it. Now she just had to figure out who Kira Volkov could be instead, and whether she could become that person before Yuri arrived to turn her back into a weapon, or before Alexei called her home to dismantle her completely. Cade's penthouse occupied the top floor of Columbia Tower, the tallest building in Seattle. 76 floors above the city, with windows that looked out over Puget Sound and the Olympic Mountains beyond. Kira took the private elevator up, using the code Cade had sent. Her backpack held the disassembled rifle, not because she planned to use it, but because leaving it in the apartment felt wrong, like abandoning part of herself. Even if that part was something she was trying to leave behind. The elevator opened directly into the penthouse. Soft lighting, hardwood floors. Modern furniture that looked expensive but lived in. Bookshelves lining one wall, filled with everything from philosophy to crime thrillers. A kitchen with professional-grade appliances that actually got used, not just for show. It looked like a home. Not a fortress, or a safe house, or a temporary stopping point. A home. Cade stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, silhouetted against the city lights. He turned when she entered, and she saw relief flash across his face. "You came," he said. "I came. I wasn't sure you would." "Neither was I." Kira set down her backpack. "Until I was." He crossed the space between them in 4 strides, hands framing her face, searching her eyes. "Are you okay?" "No," the honest answer. "Alexei called. Yuri's coming." "I have," she checked her watch, 27 hours to complete the contract or face maintenance." Maintenance being? Psychological reconditioning. They'll strip away whatever makes me capable of hesitation and turn me into a perfect weapon. She met his eyes. "I'll be alive, but I won't be me anymore." Cade's jaw tightened. "That's not happening." "It will if I don't." "It's not happening," he repeated, more forcefully. "Because you're not going back there. You're staying here, with me, where you're safe." The certainty in his voice did something to her. Made the tight knot in her chest loosen slightly. "I can't just stay here. They'll come for me, for you." "Let them." Cade pulled her closer. "I've been preparing for war with the Volkov Bratva for 6 years. The only thing that's changed is now I have a reason worth fighting for. You barely know me." "I know enough." His thumb traced her cheekbone. "I know you've spent 18 years being what other people made you. I know you're terrified of being anything else. I know you kissed me in that garden like you were drowning and I was air." "That's not." "And I know," he continued, voice softening, "that you're standing in my home right now instead of putting a bullet through my head. That means something, Kira. That means everything." She closed her eyes, leaning into his touch. "I don't know how to do this, how to be whatever this is." "Neither do I, but we'll figure it out together." "Together," she repeated, testing the word. It felt foreign. She'd been alone for so long that the concept of partnership seemed impossible. Together, Cade confirmed. He pulled back slightly. Now, tell me everything. Yuri's arrival time, Alexei's location, Bratva operations, security protocols. Everything you know. You're serious about this, about going after them. I'm serious about protecting you, about building something where neither of us has to be weapons anymore. His eyes held hers. But first, we eliminate the threat, and that means Alexei. Kira took a breath. This was it, the point of no return. Once she gave Cade this information, once she became an active traitor instead of a passive failure, there was no going back. The Bratva would hunt her forever. Alexei would never forgive her. She'd lose the only life she'd ever known. Okay, she said, I'll tell you everything. And as she started talking, laying out 18 years of operational knowledge, revealing every secret she'd been trained to protect, Kira Volkov felt the ghost dying, and didn't try to save her. Chapter 5, Breaking Point. They worked through the night. Cade's dining table became a war room. Laptops open, documents spread across the polished surface. Coffee going cold in forgotten cups. Marcus arrived at midnight with 3 of Cade's most trusted captains, men who'd proven their loyalty through years of service and blood. Kira laid out the Bratva's operational structure like she was dissecting a corpse. Clinical, precise, every detail offered up as evidence of her defection. Alexei operates from the 42nd floor, she said, pointing to the blueprint of the Vancouver high-rise that Marcus had pulled up. Private office on the northwest corner, reinforced walls, bulletproof glass, biometric security on the door. How many guards? Marcus asked, taking notes on his tablet. Minimum of 4 in the outer office, 2 more in the hallway, another 6 on the floor below as quick response. Kira traced the layout with her finger. But most of them know me. I have access codes that are still active. He hasn't revoked my clearance yet. Yet? Cade repeated. When will he? The moment I miss tomorrow's deadline. When I don't confirm the contract completion, he'll assume I've been compromised. He'll lock down everything, activate emergency protocols, and send Yuri to clean up the mess. She met Cade's eyes. Which means we have to move before that deadline. Before he knows I've turned. How long to get to Vancouver? One of the captains, a man named Torres, asked. 3 hours by car, less by helicopter. Marcus looked at Cade. We could have a team there by dawn. No, Kira shook her head. A team will trigger security. Alexei has connections to Border Patrol, local law enforcement, half the city's infrastructure. The moment an armed group crosses into his territory, he'll know. So what do you suggest? Cade's hand rested on the small of her back, casual, possessive, grounding. She'd spent the last 2 hours getting used to his touch. The way he'd reach for her periodically, like he needed to confirm she was still there. It should have felt restricting. Instead, it felt like an anchor. I go in alone, Kira said. I still have access. I can walk right past security, take the elevator to the 42nd floor, and complete the hit before anyone realizes what's happening. Absolutely not. Cade's voice was flat. Final. It's the cleanest option. It's suicide. The moment you pull the trigger, every guard in that building will come down on you. You'll never make it out. I've extracted from worse situations. Name one where you assassinated your handler in his own headquarters. Cade turned her to face him fully. You're not doing this alone. I'm the only one who can get close enough. Then I'm coming with you. The room went silent. Marcus's head snapped up from his tablet. Boss, he said carefully, that's non-negotiable. Cade's eyes never left Kira's face. If she's walking into a kill box, I'm walking in with her. You don't have access codes. You don't speak Russian. You'll stand out the moment you enter the building. Kira's tactical mind was already cataloging the problems. It won't work. Then make it work. You're the best operative the Bratva ever trained. Figure out how to get me in. She stared at him, this man who'd been her target 2 days ago. Who should have killed her the moment he realized what she was? who instead stood in front of her now, offering to walk into enemy territory at her side. "Why?" she asked. "Why would you risk this?" "Because you're not expendable. Because I'm not letting you sacrifice yourself to fix a problem we can solve together." His hands moved to her shoulders. "And because if we're building something new, we start by having each other's backs. No exceptions." Something in her chest cracked. Some wall she'd built at 8 years old, reinforced through 18 years of training that said trust was weakness and attachment was death. "Okay," she heard herself say, "but we do it my way, follow my lead, do exactly what I say, and maybe we both make it out alive. That's all I'm asking." Marcus cleared his throat. "While you two are having a moment, I'll point out that even if you both get in and complete the hit, you still have a building full of armed guards between you and extraction. Not to mention Yuri arriving in," he checked his watch, 16 hours. One problem at a time doesn't work if all the problems converge at once. He was right. Kira's mind raced through scenarios, calculating variables, trying to find the path that didn't end with her and Cade dead in a Vancouver high-rise. "Yuri's the immediate threat," she said. "If we eliminate Alexei but Yuri's still active, he'll just take over operations and come after us anyway." "So we deal with Yuri first," Torres suggested. "He'll be protected, traveling with security. He's paranoid as hell. Never uses the same route twice. Never stays in one place long enough to be a target." Kira shook her head. "We'd need to know exactly where he'll be and when." "Flight information?" Marcus offered. "He won't fly commercial. Probably using one of the Bratva's private planes. Untraceable." Cade was quiet for a moment, that look on his face that meant he was working through something. "Then, what if we don't go to him? What if we make him come to us?" "How?" "Give him a target he can't resist. Something that requires immediate action." Cade's eyes gleamed. "Give him me." Kira's blood went cold. "No. Think about it. You report that the contract is complete. Mercer's dead. But there's a complication. His second in command is threatening to expose Bratva involvement unless he's paid off. Yuri has to come personally to clean it up. It gets him here, on our territory, where we control the variables. We set the meeting point, choose the location, stack the deck in our favor. And when he shows up expecting to find Marcus, he finds you instead? You think he won't just kill you on sight? That's where you come in." Cade's hands moved to her face, holding her gaze. "You're there, as his backup. The ghost, supporting the butcher on a critical operation. He trusts you. You're Alexei's best operative. You have access, position. You can get close enough to take the shot." The plan was insane, brilliant, suicidal. It might actually work. "If I miss," Kira said slowly, "if anything goes wrong, Yuri will kill you. He's faster than you think, more brutal. He won't hesitate." "Then don't miss." Cade's smile was grim. "I've seen you work. You don't miss." "I've missed for 3 weeks." "Because you didn't want to pull the trigger. This time you will." His thumb traced her cheekbone. "Because it's him or me. And I think you've already decided which one of us you want to survive this." He was right. She had decided. Had decided the moment she'd walked away from that balcony shot. Had decided every time she'd hesitated, every time she'd watched him be human, every time she'd felt something shift inside her. She'd chosen Cade. Now she just had to make sure he survived that choice. "Okay," she said, "but we do both. Yuri first, then Alexei. Eliminate the immediate threat, then cut off the head of the organization." "Agreed. Timeline?" "Yuri lands at SeaTac at 6:40 p.m. Kira's mind shifted into tactical mode. "I call Alexei at noon. Report contract complete. Mention the complication with Marcus. Yuri will want to handle it immediately. Probably set a meeting for tonight. That gives us 6 hours to prepare. And after Yuri's handled, we drive to Vancouver. Hit Alexei's building in the early morning hours when security is lightest. 4 a.m. is shift change. Guards are tired, distracted. That's our window. Marcus was typing furiously on his tablet. "I'll arrange transportation, set up a clean house in Vancouver for staging, get weapons and backup personnel in position." "No backup," Kira said sharply. "Too many people means too many variables. Just me and Cade." That's how it has to be." Her voice left no room for argument. "I can get 2 people past security. Any more, and we're compromised." Marcus looked at Cade, clearly hoping his boss would override the insanity. But Cade nodded. "She's the expert. We do it her way." "You're both going to get killed," Marcus muttered, but he kept typing. "Fine. Clean house, weapons, extraction vehicle. What else?" "Intel on Alexei's personal security detail. I need to know who's on duty tomorrow morning, if there's anyone I can compromise, anyone who might look the other way." "On it. And I need a burner phone, something Alexei can't trace when I make the call." Torres pulled one from his jacket pocket, slid it across the table. "Prepaid. Untraceable." Kira picked it up, the weight of it familiar in her palm. "1 phone call. That's all it would take to set everything in motion. To betray 18 years of training, to become the thing she'd been taught to hunt. A traitor." "You don't have to do this," Cade said quietly, reading her expression. "We can find another way." "There is no other way. You know that." She met his eyes. "And I've already made my choice. Now I'm just following through." The others tactfully found reasons to be elsewhere. Marcus disappeared into Cade's office to coordinate logistics. Torres and the other captains spread out to make calls, arrange resources, prepare for war, which left Kira and Cade alone in the war room, surrounded by the evidence of her betrayal. "Tell me about him," Cade said after a moment. "Alexei. What he was to you." Kira leaned against the table, exhaustion finally catching up. "He was everything. Father, teacher, commander, the only person who saw value in me when my own parents didn't. They sold you. To pay debts. Drug debts, gambling debts. They chose their addictions over their daughter." She said it matter-of-factly, but the old wound still ached. "Alexei told me that made me lucky, that I'd been freed from weak people who would have destroyed me, that he'd make me strong instead. By turning you into a weapon. By giving me purpose, skills, a place in the world." She looked at her hands. Steady now, no more shaking. "I was 8 years old and terrified. He made me feel safe, made me feel powerful. Made you feel like you owed him. The truth of that landed hard, yes. That's not love, Kira, that's ownership. I know that now." She looked at Cade. "But for 18 years it was all I had, and tomorrow I'm going to kill him for it." Cade crossed to her, pulled her into his arms. She went willingly, letting her head rest against his chest, listening to his heartbeat. Steady, strong, alive. "You're allowed to grieve him," he said into her hair. "Even if he was terrible. Even if this is the right choice. You're allowed to feel loss." "I don't know how to feel loss. I don't know how to feel anything." Her voice cracked. 18 years of training to not feel, and now everything is. Overwhelming. I know. His arms tightened around her. "But you're feeling it anyway. That's what makes you human, not a weapon." Kira closed her eyes, letting herself have this moment, this small pocket of peace before the violence started. "I'm terrified," she admitted. "Not of dying. I've been prepared to die since I was 13, but of," she swallowed hard, "of failing, of losing you. Of getting this close to something real and watching it burn." "Then we don't fail." Cade tilted her face up, made her look at him. "We go in, we do the job, we get out. Together, and when it's done, when we've eliminated the threats and taken control of both territories. Then what? Then we build something better. Something that's ours. Where neither of us has to be weapons anymore." He kissed her forehead. "Where you get to choose who you want to be. I don't know who that is. So we'll figure it out. You have time now. Years. Decades, if we're smart and lucky." His mouth found hers, soft and deliberate. "Starting tomorrow, you're not the ghost anymore. You're just Kira, and Kira gets to be whoever the hell she wants." The kiss deepened, turned desperate. All the fear and anticipation and impossible hope of the last 2 days compressed into this moment. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Cade pressed his forehead to hers. "Stay tonight," he said. "Don't go back to that apartment. Stay here, with me." "I should." "There's nothing you should do except rest. You've been running on adrenaline for weeks. Tomorrow is going to be hell. Tonight, just stay." She should refuse, should maintain distance, keep professional boundaries, treat this like the operation it was. Instead, she nodded. Because she'd spent 18 years sleeping alone in safe houses and temporary apartments, and she was tired, so tired. And Cade was offering something she'd never had. A place to rest, someone to watch her back, the promise that she wasn't alone anymore. "Okay," she whispered, "I'll stay." He led her to the bedroom, king-sized bed with soft sheets, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city lights. The space was masculine but comfortable, lived in, real. "Shower's through there," Cade said, pointing to the ensuite. "I'll find you something to sleep in." Kira stood in the middle of his bedroom, suddenly uncertain. She'd seduced targets before, had used her body as a tool when necessary. But this was different. This was, "Hey," Cade's hand on her shoulder, gentle. "Just sleep, that's all. I'm not expecting." "I know," she turned to face him. "But what if I want?" The words stuck in her throat. Want was dangerous. Want meant vulnerability. Want meant acknowledging needs that weapons weren't supposed to have. But Cade understood anyway. His hand moved to her face, thumb tracing her lower lip. "Then we'll figure that out too," he said softly. "But tomorrow we go to war. Tonight, let's just exist. No expectations, no performance, just this. This. Whatever this was. The strange, terrifying, impossible thing growing between them." Kira nodded, went to shower. Stood under scalding water and watched 18 years of conditioning wash down the drain. When she emerged, Cade had left one of his shirts on the bed, soft cotton that smelled like cedar and safety. She put it on, the fabric hanging to mid-thigh. He was already in bed, reading something on his tablet. He looked up when she entered, and something in his expression made her breath catch. "Come here," he said, setting aside the tablet and holding out his hand. She went, climbed into bed beside him, let him pull her close. Her head on his chest, his arm around her shoulders, her leg tangled with his. "Tell me something," he said after a moment. "Something real, not tactical information or operational details. Just something about you. What do you want to know? What did you want to be before? When you were 8 years old, before everything happened, what did little Kira dream about?" The question landed like a punch. No one had ever asked her that. In 18 years, no one had cared who she'd been before the training started. "A teacher," she said finally. "I wanted to be a teacher. I liked reading, liked learning. Wanted to help other kids learn too." "That's beautiful. That's impossible now." "Maybe. Or maybe when this is done, when we've built something stable, you could try. Teach self-defense classes. Languages. Whatever you want." His hand moved through her hair, soothing. "You'll have options, Kira, real ones." She wanted to believe him, wanted to imagine a future where she was something other than a weapon, where she could have normal dreams and normal hopes, and a life that didn't revolve around killing. "What about you?" she asked. "What did you want to be?" "Architect," the answer came easily. "I liked building things, creating structures that would last, that would mean something. You build now. Just empires instead of buildings." "Not by choice. My father died. The family needed leadership, and I stepped up, but it was never what I wanted." He was quiet for a moment. "That's why I understand you. We're both living lives other people chose for us." "Not anymore," Kira whispered. "After tomorrow, we choose." "After tomorrow," he agreed. They lay there in the darkness, the city glowing beyond the windows, and Kira felt something she'd never experienced before. Peace. Just for a moment, just for tonight. Tomorrow would bring violence. Tomorrow she'd kill the man who'd raised her, and the man who'd been sent to kill Cade. Tomorrow she'd burn 18 years of training to the ground and build something new from the ashes. But tonight, she was just Kira, and Cade was holding her like she mattered, like she was worth protecting, like she was something more than a weapon. "Whatever happens tomorrow," she said into the darkness, "thank you for seeing me, for choosing to let me live when you should have killed me. Thank you for not pulling the trigger." His arms tightened around her. "Now sleep. Tomorrow we end this. Together. Together." Kira closed her eyes and, for the first time in 18 years, let herself fall asleep, feeling safe. Not knowing that tomorrow would test that safety in ways neither of them had anticipated. Not knowing that betrayal and violence and impossible choices were waiting just beyond the dawn. Not knowing that the ghost wasn't quite dead yet, and that her final death would cost them both more than they'd bargained for. Chapter 6. The Alliance. Kira woke to sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows and the smell of coffee. For a moment, just a moment, she forgot where she was, forgot the last 3 weeks. Forgot that today she was going to kill 2 men and overthrow the only organization she'd ever belonged to. Then reality crashed back, and she sat up abruptly. Cade stood by the windows, fully dressed in dark jeans and a black Henley, holding a mug of coffee and staring out at the city. He turned when he heard her move. "Morning," he said, and there was something in his voice, tension, anticipation, the sound of a man preparing for war. "What time is it?" 9:30. "I let you sleep. You needed it." 9:30, which meant she had 2.5 hours before she called Alexei, before she set everything in motion, before there was no going back. Kira pushed her hair out of her face, suddenly aware that she was wearing Cade's shirt and nothing else, that she'd slept in his bed, in his arms, and that it had felt more right than anything she'd experienced in years. "Coffee's in the kitchen," Cade said, reading her discomfort. "Marcus brought clothes, jeans, jacket, boots. Figured you'd need tactical gear. They're in the closet." Professional, focused on the mission, giving her space to process. She appreciated it even as part of her wanted him to cross the room and kiss her good morning, like this was normal, like they were normal. But they weren't normal, and today would prove exactly how far from normal they'd gotten. Kira showered quickly, dressed in the clothes Marcus had provided, all black, functional, comfortable enough for combat. When she emerged, she found Cade in the kitchen making breakfast. "Scrambled eggs," he said without looking up. "Toast, fruit, you should eat. Long day ahead." She slid onto a bar stool, accepted the plate he offered. The domestic normalcy of it was surreal. This man, who ran a criminal empire, cooking breakfast in his penthouse the morning they were planning multiple assassinations. "You cook when you're nervous," she observed. "My mother's influence. She always said that food grounded you, reminded you that no matter how bad things got, humans still needed to eat, still needed basic things." He leaned against the counter, watching her. "Besides, if I'm sending you into danger, least I can do is make sure you're fed. You're coming with me. Into part of it. Yuri is our joint operation. But Alexei," he paused, "that's yours. That has to be yours. For closure, for freedom. I can't take that from you." Kira set down her fork. "You're saying you won't come to Vancouver. I'm saying I'll be there for support, for extraction, for backup. But when you walk into that building, when you face Alexei, that moment belongs to you." His eyes held hers. "You need to be the one who ends it. Not for me. For yourself." He was right. She knew he was right. But the thought of walking into that building alone, of facing Alexei without Cade beside her. "I'm scared," she admitted. "Good. Fear keeps you sharp." Cade moved around the counter, stood close enough that she could feel his warmth. "But you're also the best operative the Bratva ever trained. You can do this." "What if I can't? What if I get there and I hesitate? Like you hesitated with me?" His hand cupped her face. "You won't. Because this time, Pulling the trigger sets you free. This time, the target is your cage, not your future. Kira leaned into his touch, drawing strength from it. Tell me the plan again, all of it. So he did. Laid it out step by step while she ate breakfast and memorized every detail. At noon, she'd call Alexei from the burner phone. Report the contract complete. Cade Mercer eliminated in what looked like a home invasion. But there was a complication. Marcus Chen had survived, had evidence of Bratva involvement, and was threatening to go to the FBI unless he was paid $2 million for his silence. Alexei would send Yuri. Immediately. The butcher specialized in cleaning up loose ends, and a witness with federal connections was exactly the kind of loose end that required personal attention. Kira would coordinate with Yuri. As the ghost, she still had credibility. She'd set the meeting. An abandoned warehouse in the industrial district, 9 p.m. Isolated. Controllable. She'd tell Yuri she'd be there for backup, to ensure the hit went smoothly. But when Yuri arrived, he wouldn't find Marcus Chen. He'd find Cade Mercer, very much alive, and Kira would have a decision to make. He'll suspect a trap the moment he sees you, Kira said. Yuri's paranoid. Brutal, but not stupid. Then we make it convincing. Marcus is there too, bound on his knees. Looks like I'm interrogating him, getting information about the Bratva. Yuri thinks he's walking in on a security breach that needs immediate containment. And when he goes to kill you both, you put a bullet through his head. Cade said it simply, matter of fact. Center mass, then headshot to confirm. You know the protocol. And if I miss, you won't. Cade, you won't. He pulled her up from the bar stool, held her close. Because missing means I die. And you've already decided you're not going to let that happen. He was right. She had decided. But knowing something intellectually and executing it under pressure were different things. After Yuri's down, Cade continued, we have maybe 6 hours before Alexei realizes something's wrong, before he locks down security and goes underground. That's our window. We drive to Vancouver. Marcus has a car ready, clean plates, untraceable. We hit the building at 4 a.m. during shift change. I go in alone. You go in first. I follow 3 minutes behind. You bypass security using your codes. I come in through the loading dock. Marcus has a contact who'll leave it unsecured. We meet on the 42nd floor. And if I get caught before you arrive, then I storm the fucking building and get you out. That's not a plan. That's suicide. That's non-negotiable. His voice hardened. I'm not losing you. Not to Alexei, not to the Bratva, not to anything. You understand? The possessiveness in his tone should have triggered her defenses, should have made her bristle at being claimed. Instead, it made her feel protected, valued, like she was something worth dying for. I understand, she whispered. Good. He kissed her, hard, thorough, like he was memorizing the taste of her. When he pulled back, his eyes were intense. Now, let's talk about after. After? After we've eliminated the threats. After we've taken control of both territories. After we've built our empire. He led her to the war room where the maps and documents still covered the table. This is what I'm proposing. He spread out a new map, the Pacific Northwest, with territories marked in different colors. Red for Mercer Holdings, blue for Volkov operations, and purple where they overlapped. Right now our organizations are at war over these purple zones, Cade said. Territory disputes, trade route conflicts, the usual power struggles. We're bleeding resources fighting each other, instead of expanding into new markets. And you want to stop fighting. I want to merge, completely, Mercer infrastructure and resources combined with Bratva connections and operational expertise. His finger traced the map. We'd control everything from Vancouver to San Francisco. Drugs, weapons, money laundering, protection rackets, the whole supply chain. That's ambitious. That's smart. Individually we're strong. Together we'd be unstoppable. He looked at her. But it only works if we're united. If we present a completely unified front. No division. No question about leadership. What are you proposing? A partnership. Real partnership. Not just tactical alliance, but... He pulled out another document. I had my lawyers draw this up last night. It's a contract. Formal business agreement. Mercer Volkov Enterprises. 50-50 split on all operations. Joint decision-making on major strategic moves. Equal authority. Kira stared at the document. Her name, her real name, Kira Volkov, listed as co-owner, equal partner, not subordinate, not asset, not weapon. Equal. This is insane, she breathed. This is practical. You know the Bratva inside and out. You have relationships, contacts, intelligence I can't access. I bring legitimacy, infrastructure, connections to the business world that the Bratva doesn't have. Cade moved closer. Plus, it sends a message. The ghost and the heir to the Mercer Empire, united. Anyone who comes after one of us comes after both of us. And if we fail? If Yuri kills us tonight, or Alexei gets me tomorrow, or... We don't fail, his hands framed her face. We don't fail because we're better than they think, smarter, more motivated, and because we have something they don't. What's that? Each other, he kissed her forehead. Alexei made you into a perfect weapon, but he forgot that weapons can choose their own targets. And you've chosen him. The words settled over her like armor. What about your people? Kira asked. Marcus and the captains. Will they accept me, a Bratva operative in a leadership position? They'll accept what I tell them to accept. And what I'm telling them is that you're my partner. In business and... He paused. And in everything else. Everything else meaning? Meaning I want you beside me, always. Not just for tactical advantage or operational efficiency. His thumb traced her lower lip. Meaning, I'm falling for you, Kira Volkov, and I'm done pretending otherwise. Her breath caught. You barely know me. I know you hesitated 12 times when you should have killed me. I know you kissed me in a garden like you were drowning. I know you're standing here planning to betray everything you've ever known because you chose me over them. His forehead pressed to hers. I know enough. This is happening too fast. We don't have time for slow. We have hours before everything explodes, so I'm saying it now, while I can, while we're both still alive to hear it. His eyes held hers. After this is done, I want you to stay. Not in a safe house, not in a temporary arrangement. Here, with me, building something that's ours. Kira's hands moved to his chest, feeling his heartbeat. Steady, strong, real. I don't know how to be in a relationship. Don't know how to be domestic or normal or anything. Except what I was trained to be. Then we'll learn together. We'll be a disaster. We'll probably argue constantly and drive each other crazy. He smiled. But we'll be a disaster together. Despite everything, the fear, the impending violence, the impossible odds. Kira laughed. That's the worst sales pitch I've ever heard. Is it working? Maybe. She pulled him down into a kiss. Ask me again after we've survived today. Deal. They spent the next hour reviewing the plan, going over every detail, every contingency, every possible complication. Marcus joined them at 10:30 with updates. The warehouse was secured. Weapons were in place. The Vancouver safe house was ready. Extraction vehicles were positioned. At 11:45, Kira picked up the burner phone. Her hands were steady. Her breathing was controlled. Every system operational. But inside, she was burning. This was it. The point of no return. Once she made this call, once she lied to Alexei and set Yuri in motion, she was committed. Traitor, defector, target. You don't have to do this, Cade said quietly beside her. We can find another way. There is no other way. You know that. She looked at him. And I'm tired of being afraid, tired of being controlled, tired of being anything except free. Then, make the call, and take your freedom. Kira dialed. The phone rang once, twice. Alexei answered on the third ring. You're late, he said in Russian. No greeting, just accusation. I had to be sure. Kira replied in the same language, her voice steady. The contract is complete. Target eliminated at 0247 hours this morning. Clean kill, no witnesses. Silence. Then confirm. Home invasion scenario. I bypassed his penthouse security, waited for him to return from a meeting. 3 shots. 2 center mass, 1 headshot. He was dead before he hit the floor. Body? On site. His security will find it this morning. It'll look like a professional hit, but nothing that traces back to us. More silence. Kira could almost hear Alexei processing, looking for inconsistencies. There's a complication, she continued, keeping her voice level. His second-in-command, Marcus Chen, survived. He wasn't at the penthouse when I made the hit, but he's put together what happened. He has evidence, documents, recordings, proof of Bratva involvement. So eliminate him. He's threatening to go to federal authorities, FBI. He wants $2 million to disappear. If we kill him now, the evidence goes public automatically. Let it go public, we'll handle it. He knows too much, Alexei. Names, operations, supply chains. If the feds get that information, then you should have killed him when you killed Mercer. Alexei's voice was cold. This is your failure, Kira. I'm aware, which is why I'm requesting Yuri's assistance. This requires his particular skill set. Another pause. Longer this time. You want me to send the butcher to clean up your mess. I want to ensure the loose end is permanently tied off. Marcus Chen is meeting me tonight to negotiate payment. 9 p.m., Industrial District. Warehouse on Pier 73. I'll have him isolated. Yuri can make it look like a robbery gone wrong. No connection to the Bratva. Kira held her breath, waiting. Everything depended on Alexei believing this, on him sending Yuri into the trap. I don't like complications, Alexei said finally. Neither do I. That's why I'm fixing it. See that you do. I'll send Yuri. He lands at SeaTac at 1840 hours. Meet him at the airport. Coordinate the operation. And Kira? Yes? After this is done, come home. We need to discuss your performance on this contract. The delays. The complications. These are concerning patterns. Maintenance. He was still threatening maintenance. Understood, Kira said. After tonight I'll head to Vancouver. Good. Don't disappoint me again. The call ended. Kira set down the phone, her hands still steady but her heart racing. He bought it? Kate asked. He bought it. Yuri's coming. She checked the time. We have 8 hours to prepare. Then let's get to work. The rest of the day was a blur of preparation. Weapons checked and rechecked, ammunition loaded, Kevlar vests tested, communication devices synced. Marcus coordinated with his team, positioning backup units at strategic points around the warehouse. Torres handled the Vancouver logistics, confirming safehouse access and extraction routes. At 6 p.m., Kira and Cade stood in the penthouse, both dressed in black tactical gear, weapons holstered. Last chance to back out, Cade said. I'm not backing out. Last chance for me to tell you that you're incredible. That watching you work, watching you plan and strategize and transform into this efficient, deadly professional is the most attractive thing I've ever seen. Despite everything, Kira smiled. You have strange tastes. I have excellent tastes. He pulled her close. After tonight, when this is done, don't. She pressed her fingers to his mouth. Don't make promises about after. After is for people who survive. We're going to survive. Maybe, but let's focus on the now, on the next few hours, on not getting killed. She replaced her fingers with her mouth, kissing him hard. And then we can talk about after. He kissed her back, and for a moment, just a moment, the war room disappeared, the weapons disappeared, the mission disappeared. There was just this, just them. Just the impossible thing they'd built, from hesitation and crosshairs, and choices that defied all logic. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Cade pressed his forehead to hers. Together, he said. Together, Kira agreed. Then they left the penthouse and drove toward the warehouse where Yuri the butcher was waiting, and where the ghost would kill for the last time. Not for a contract, Not for the Bratva, but for freedom, and for the man who'd given her a reason to want it. Chapter 7. War. The warehouse was exactly what Kira had requested. Isolated, industrial, abandoned for years after the shipping company that owned it went bankrupt. 60,000 square feet of empty space, rusted metal beams, and shadows that swallowed light. Perfect for an execution. Marcus had arrived first, positioned himself exactly where Kira had specified, on his knees in the center of the main floor, hands zip-tied behind his back, head down. The picture of a captured man waiting for death. Except the zip ties were loose enough to break with minimal effort, and he had a Glock 19 taped to the small of his back under his jacket. Cade stood 20 feet away, partially concealed behind a concrete support pillar, his own weapon drawn. From this angle, it would look like he was interrogating Marcus. Getting information. Doing exactly what a crime boss would do with a subordinate who'd become a liability. Kira was positioned in the shadows of the upper catwalk, 40 feet above the main floor. Remington MSR assembled and ready, scope trained on the warehouse's main entrance. She'd had the shot on Cade a dozen times in the past 3 weeks. Tonight, she'd take a different one. Yuri's 10 minutes out, Marcus said quietly, his voice carrying through the earpiece they all wore. SUV with 2 guards, all armed. Copy, Kira murmured. Cade, you in position? Set. His voice was steady, calm, like he did this every day instead of deliberately painting a target on himself. You good up there? I'm good. Remember, center mass first, then headshot. Don't hesitate. I won't. She wouldn't, couldn't, because hesitation would get Cade killed, and that was no longer an acceptable outcome. The minutes ticked by. Kira controlled her breathing, found the rhythm she'd been taught at 13. Her heartbeat slowed. The world compressed to the circle of her scope. This was familiar territory. This was what she'd been built for. The only difference was the target. And the reason for pulling the trigger. Headlights, Marcus said. They're here. Through the scope, Kira watched the warehouse's side entrance, heard the rumble of a vehicle outside, the slam of car doors. Then the door opened. Yuri walked in first. He was shorter than Kira remembered, maybe 5'10", but built like a tank. Broad shoulders, thick arms, a body that had absorbed decades of violence and turned it into muscle. His face was scarred, a network of old wounds that told stories of knives and bullets and fights he'd won through sheer brutality. He wore tactical gear, Kevlar vest, multiple weapons visible. This wasn't a man who believed in subtlety. 2 guards flanked him, both armed with assault rifles, both scanning the warehouse with professional paranoia. Marcus Chen, Yuri said in English heavily accented with Russian. His voice was a growl. You make big mistake. Threaten Bratva. Marcus kept his head down, playing the part perfectly. I just want to disappear. Take the money. You never hear from me again. Is not how this works. Yuri moved closer, each step deliberate. You see too much, know too much. Bratva don't pay for silence. We buy with bodies. In the scope, Kira tracked his movement. Center mass. Right over the heart. The Kevlar vest would slow the bullet, but not stop it at this range. Yuri was 15 feet from Marcus now, 10 feet from Cade's position behind the pillar. 5 more steps, and he'd be in the kill zone. Wait, Marcus said, finally looking up. There's something you should know about who really killed Mercer. Yuri stopped. What you mean? I mean, it wasn't just the ghost. There was another player. Someone who... Enough talking. Yuri reached for his weapon, and Cade stepped out from behind the pillar. He means me, Cade said calmly, his own gun trained on Yuri. Surprise, I'm not dead. For one frozen moment, everyone stared. Yuri's eyes went wide, then narrow, processing. Trap, he snarled in Russian. Volkov bitch set trap. His hand moved toward his radio. Kira fired. The shot was perfect, clean, exactly where she'd aimed. The bullet caught Yuri in the chest, right of center. He staggered back, the impact driving him off balance. His Kevlar vest had stopped the round from full penetration, but the force was enough to knock him down. Not enough to kill him. Fuck, Kira breathed, already repositioning for the headshot. But Yuri was fast, faster than a man his size should be. He rolled behind a concrete barrier, shouting orders to his guards in rapid Russian. The guards opened fire. Bullets tore through the warehouse. Marcus dropped flat, rolled, came up with his Glock drawn. Cade dove behind another pillar, as rounds sparked off metal and concrete. Kira fired again, tracking one of the guards. Headshot, clean. He went down hard. The second guard swung his rifle toward the catwalk, toward her position. She rolled left as bullets chewed through the metal grating where she'd been lying. "Kira, you hit?" Cade's voice, tight with concern. "I'm fine. Relocating." She low-crawled to a new position, the rifle awkward in the confined space. Yuri's behind the barrier on the east side, still mobile. "I've got the guard," Marcus said. 3 quick shots. The second guard went down, which left Yuri. And Yuri was yelling into his radio, Russian coming fast, calling for backup, "He's calling Alexei," Kira said, her blood going cold, "telling him it's a trap, that I betrayed the Bratva. Then we end this now." Cade's voice was steel. "Before reinforcements arrive." He moved, fluid, fast, professional, circling around to flank Yuri's position. Kira tracked him through the scope, her heart in her throat. This wasn't the plan. The plan was for her to take the shot, clean and distant. Not for Cade to engage in close quarters with a man who'd earned the name Butcher through decades of brutal kills. "Cade, wait." But he was already moving. Yuri saw him coming, swung around, weapon rising. Kira fired without thinking. No breath control, no heartbeat regulation, just instinct and desperation. The bullet hit Yuri's gun hand. He screamed, the weapon clattering away across concrete. Cade closed the distance in 3 strides, slammed into Yuri like a linebacker, driving him back against the barrier. They went down in a tangle of limbs and violence. "Cade!" Kira was moving, abandoning the rifle, pulling her sidearm as she raced for the catwalk stairs. Below, Cade and Yuri fought with savage efficiency. Yuri was heavier, more experienced, but Cade was younger, faster, and fighting for something Yuri couldn't understand. He was fighting for her. Yuri got on top, massive hands, closing around Cade's throat, squeezing. Kira hit the bottom of the stairs at a dead run, raised her weapon. But they were too close together, moving too much. She couldn't risk the shot without hitting Cade. Marcus was there first, grabbed Yuri's shoulder, tried to pull him off. Yuri's elbow snapped back, caught Marcus in the face. He went down hard. Cade's face was turning red. His hands scrabbled at Yuri's grip, but the man was like stone, unmoving, unstoppable. "Get off him!" Kira heard herself scream. Yuri's eyes found hers. And despite the chokehold, despite the violence, he smiled. "Little Kira," he said in Russian, "little ghost, Alexei will be so disappointed. Let him go." "Or what? You shoot me. You shoot, you maybe hit your boyfriend. You hesitate." His grip tightened on Cade's throat. "He dies." He was right. At this angle, this distance, with them tangled together. Cade's hand moved, barely visible, reaching for something at his ankle. A knife. He drove it up and into Yuri's side, between the Kevlar plates. Once, twice, 3 times. Yuri roared, his grip on Cade's throat loosened. Kira fired. Point blank, no scope, no distance, just her weapon pressed against Yuri's temple, and the trigger squeezed. The Butcher dropped. For a moment, no one moved. The warehouse echoed with gunfire's ghost, smoke and cordite, and the copper smell of blood. Then Cade was coughing, rolling away from Yuri's body, gasping for air. Kira dropped to her knees beside him. "Are you okay?" "Cade, talk to me." "I'm fine." His voice was raw, throat already bruising. "You got him." "We got him." She helped him sit up, her hands shaking now that the action was over. Jesus Christ, that was too close. But it worked. Cade touched her face, his hand bloody from the fight but his eyes clear. You did it. You chose. She had. When Yuri had Cade's throat in his hands, when the shot was impossible and hesitation could have meant death, she'd chosen, without thinking, without calculating probabilities or weighing options. She'd chosen Cade. Marcus groaned, sitting up and touching his face. I think he broke my nose. Probably, Cade agreed. We need to move. Yuri got a message out before we killed him. Alexei knows. Kira's stomach dropped. How much time do we have? Hours, maybe less. Cade got to his feet, wincing. We stick to the plan. Vancouver, now. You're hurt. I'm fine. We don't have time for fine. He pulled her up, held her close for just a moment. You saved my life. You saved mine first, in that alley, when you let me walk away. Then we're even. He kissed her, quick and hard. Now let's go finish this. They left the warehouse burning. Marcus had rigged incendiaries before Yuri arrived. Insurance. To destroy any evidence. By the time fire crews arrived, there would be nothing left but ash, and 3 bodies too charred for easy identification. The SUV Marcus had arranged was waiting 2 blocks away. Clean plates, untraceable. They loaded weapons in the back, climbed in, and drove north toward the Canadian border. Kira watched the city lights fade in the rearview mirror. Somewhere behind them, the warehouse was burning. Yuri's body was burning. The last 3 hours were burning to ash and memory. And ahead, in Vancouver, Alexei was waiting. Waiting for a report that would never come. Waiting for his best operative to return home. Waiting for Kira to walk through his door so he could send her for maintenance and strip away whatever humanity she'd managed to preserve. He'd be disappointed. Tell me about the building again, Cade said from the passenger seat. Marcus was driving, keeping them 5 miles over the speed limit. Fast enough to make time, slow enough to avoid attention. So Kira told him, laid out the approach for the 3rd time, making sure every detail was memorized. They'd crossed the border using fake credentials. Marcus had arranged Canadian passports that would pass inspection. Drive to the safe house, a condo in Yaletown that belonged to one of Cade's business contacts who didn't ask questions. Rest for 2 hours. Just 2. Enough to let adrenaline fade, to let their bodies recover from the warehouse fight. Then at 4 a.m. they'd hit the building. You're sure about your access codes? Marcus asked, eyes on the road. They were still active when I called Alexei this morning. He hasn't revoked them yet. Kira stared out the window. He doesn't think I'd betray him. Even now, even knowing something's wrong, he can't imagine his perfect weapon turning on him. His mistake, Cade said quietly. His mistake, Kira agreed. They crossed the border at 11:30. The customs agent barely looked at their passports, waved them through with bored efficiency. The safe house was exactly as advertised. A modern condo with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking False Creek. Furniture that looked like it came from IKEA, a kitchen stocked with basics. Anonymous, functional, temporary. Marcus disappeared into one of the bedrooms. I'll take first watch. You two get some sleep. Sleep. As if that was possible with what was coming. But Kira was exhausted. The adrenaline from the warehouse fight was fading, leaving her shaky and hollow. Cade pulled her into the other bedroom. 2 hours. We need to be sharp. I'm not sure I can sleep. Try, for me. So she tried. Lay down in the unfamiliar bed, in the unfamiliar room, in a foreign country where she was about to commit murder. Cade lay beside her, fully clothed, one arm around her waist. Tell me something, she said into the darkness, something about after. About what we're going to do when this is done. When this is done, we're going to disappear for a week, somewhere remote. Somewhere with no weapons and no operations, and no one trying to kill us. His breath was warm against her ear. We're going to sleep for 12 hours straight. We're going to eat food we didn't cook. We're going to figure out what the hell we are to each other when we're not planning assassinations. What if we're boring? What if without the danger and the violence we don't actually work? Then we'll be boring together. His arm tightened. But I don't think that's going to be a problem. I think we're going to be a disaster in the best possible way. Despite everything, Kira smiled. A disaster? The best kind. He kissed her shoulder. Now sleep. 2 hours. Then we end this. She closed her eyes. And somehow, impossibly, she slept. The alarm woke her at 3:30 a.m. Cade was already up, dressed in black tactical gear, weapons holstered. He looked like what he was, a man preparing for war. Time? She asked, sitting up. Time, he confirmed. They dressed in silence. Kira pulled on the black gear Marcus had provided, strapped on her holster, checked her weapons with practiced efficiency. The familiar ritual was grounding. This, at least, she knew how to do. Marcus was waiting in the living room with coffee and a tablet showing the building's security feeds. Your contact came through, he said to Cade. Loading dock door will be unlocked from 0400 to 0415. After that, it's on a timer and you're locked out. 15 minutes. Cade looked at Kira. Enough time? It has to be. She studied the feeds. Guards looked tired. Shift change was at midnight. They're 4 hours in, getting comfortable. That works in our favor. Alexei's still in his office. Marcus pointed to a specific feed. He hasn't left since we got the alert about Yuri. He knows something's wrong. Good. Kira's voice was cold. Let him know. Let him feel what it's like to be trapped. To know death is coming and not be able to stop it. Cade's hand found hers, squeezed. You don't have to do this. We can find another way. Lay siege. Starve him out. Wait for a better opportunity. There is no better opportunity. He's vulnerable now, confused, off balance. She met his eyes. And I need to do this. For me. For closure. For the 8-year-old girl whose parents sold her, and the 18 years she spent being a weapon. I need to be the one who ends it. He nodded. Understood. Then let's go. The drive to the financial district took 12 minutes. They parked 3 blocks away, in an alley where Marcus would wait with the engine running. 15 minutes, Marcus said as they got out. If you're not back in 15, I'm coming in. Give us 20, Cade said. But if we're not out by then... I know. Assume the worst. Burn everything and run. Marcus's jaw was tight. Don't make me do that, boss. We won't. Kira and Cade walked toward the building. At 4 a.m., Vancouver's financial district was dead. A few homeless people in doorways. A drunk stumbling home. A security guard making rounds 3 blocks over. No one to witness. No one to care. The building rose above them, 42 stories of glass and steel. At the top, lights burned in the corner office. Alexei, waiting, watching, knowing his perfect weapon was coming home. Main entrance or loading dock? Cade asked quietly. I go through main entrance, use my codes, walk right past security like I'm supposed to be here. You take the loading dock. We meet on 42. She turned to face him. If something goes wrong... Nothing's going wrong. If it does, you get out. You don't come for me. You don't try to be a hero. You survive. Not happening. Cade... He kissed her, hard, desperate, like he was trying to memorize the taste of her. We survive together, or we don't survive at all, he said against her mouth. Those are the only options. Then he was gone, disappearing around the corner toward the loading dock. Kira stood alone on the empty street, staring up at the building that had been her prison for 18 years. Time to burn it down. She walked through the main entrance like she owned it. The security guard at the desk looked up, startled. Kira, he said in Russian, we weren't expecting you. Alexei called me in. Something about the Mercer contract. She kept her voice casual, bored, the ghost completing another routine task. Where is he? 42nd floor, his private office. But, the guard hesitated. He left orders. No one gets access without his direct approval. Then call him. Tell him I'm here. The guard reached for his phone. Kira's hand moved. Fast. Efficient. The suppressed pistol was out and firing before he could dial. One shot. Forehead. He slumped over the desk without a sound. She dragged his body behind the counter, wiped down the desk, and headed for the elevator. The numbers climbed. 30, 35, 40. Her heart rate stayed steady. Her breathing remained controlled. But inside, she was screaming. 18 years. 18 years of training and conditioning, and being made into something she never chose to be. Tonight, it ended. The elevator doors opened on 42. 2 guards stood in the hallway, both armed, both looking alert despite the hour. They recognized her immediately. "Kira," the first one said. "Alexei's expecting you." "I know." She shot him, center mass. He dropped. The second guard went for his weapon. Kira was faster. 2 shots. Chest and head. He hit the wall and slid down, leaving a red smear. The hallway was silent, except for her footsteps on marble floors. She walked toward the corner office, toward the door marked private, toward the man who'd made her into the ghost. Toward freedom. Or death. At this point they felt like the same thing. Chapter 8. The Reckoning. The door to Alexei's office was reinforced steel disguised as mahogany. Biometric lock that required fingerprint and retinal scan, the kind of security that said the man inside trusted no one. Kira pressed her thumb to the scanner, leaned in for the retinal scan. The lock clicked green. The door slid open with a pneumatic hiss. Alexei sat behind his desk, massive, dark wood, positioned to face the door. He'd been waiting for her. His hands were folded on the desktop, perfectly still. No weapon visible, but she knew he had at least 3 within reach. He looked exactly as she remembered. 63 years old but fit, silver hair cut military short, pale blue eyes that missed nothing. He wore a suit despite the hour, charcoal gray, perfectly tailored. Alexei never allowed himself to appear anything less than in control. "Hello, Kira Mikhailovna," he said in Russian. His voice was calm, almost gentle. "I've been expecting you." She kept her weapon drawn, trained on his chest. "Have you?" "Of course. The moment Yuri's signal cut off, I knew." He tilted his head slightly, studying her like she was a specimen under glass. "You killed him. The butcher. The most dangerous operative in the Bratva, and you put him down like a dog. He was going to kill someone I care about. Cade Mercer. The target you were supposed to eliminate 3 weeks ago." Alexei's expression didn't change. "Tell me, how long have you been compromised? Since the beginning? Since the first surveillance?" "I'm not compromised. I made a choice. Weapons don't make choices. Weapons follow orders." He stood slowly, hands still visible, movements deliberate. "I spent 18 years building you into perfection, teaching you, training you, shaping you into the most effective operative I've ever created. And for what? So you could throw it away over a man? It wasn't about him." "Not entirely." Kira's finger rested against the trigger. "It was about me. About being tired of being your weapon. About wanting something more than killing strangers for money." "Something more." Alexei's mouth twisted. "Do you know what you are without me? You're nothing. A debt your parents couldn't pay. Trash they threw away. I gave you value, purpose. I made you matter. You made me into a monster. I made you into a survivor, into someone powerful and feared and valuable." He took a step forward. "Without me, you'd be dead. Or worse, broken, used up, discarded by people who saw you as nothing but a burden. Like you see me as nothing but a tool. I see you as my greatest achievement, another step. I see you as the daughter I never had, the legacy I'll leave behind." The word daughter hit like a bullet, because in 18 years he'd never called her that, never offered anything approaching familial affection. Only now, when she was pointing a gun at him, did he try. "Don't," Kira said, her voice shaking. "Don't try to manipulate me. Not now." I'm not manipulating, I'm telling you the truth. He was close enough now that she could see the lines around his eyes, the silver stubble on his jaw. I care about you, Kira, more than I've cared about anyone since my wife died. You think I'd invest 18 years in someone I didn't care about? You care about what I can do for you, about my utility, my performance metrics. Her weapon never wavered. The moment I stopped being useful, you threatened maintenance. You were going to strip away everything that makes me human and turn me into a perfect, empty weapon. I was going to save you from yourself. Alexei's voice hardened. You were compromised, showing signs of emotional attachment. I've seen it before. Operatives who develop feelings for their targets. It always ends badly. I was trying to protect you. By destroying me. By preserving what matters. The skill, the precision, the effectiveness. He spread his hands. The feelings? Those just make you vulnerable. They cloud judgment. They get you killed. Or they make you human. Human, he said it like a curse. Look where human got your parents. Drug addicts so deep in debt they sold their own child. Look where human gets most people. Weak, struggling, crushed by circumstances they can't control. I offered you better than that. You offered me a cage. I offered you power. They stared at each other across 6 feet of office space. 18 years of history compressed into this moment. Where is he? Alexei asked finally. Your lover, the man you've betrayed everything for. Is he here? Or did you come alone? I'm here. Cade's voice came from behind her. Kira's heart stopped. She hadn't heard the door open, hadn't heard him approach. But there he was, stepping through the entrance, weapon drawn, moving to stand beside her. The loading dock worked like a charm, Cade said calmly, his gun trained on Alexei. Your security really is as good as Kira promised. Except for the part where they're all dead now. Alexei's eyes moved between them, assessing, calculating. Cade Mercer, I've heard a great deal about you. Your reputation is impressive. I could say the same. The man who built the Volkov Bratva from nothing. Who turned a scattered collection of Russian immigrants into one of the most powerful criminal organizations on the West Coast. Cade's voice was cold. The man who takes children and turns them into weapons. I take survivors and make them strong. You take victims and perpetuate their trauma. Cade moved closer to Kira, their shoulders almost touching. But that ends tonight. Does it? Alexei smiled. You think killing me solves your problems? The Bratva has infrastructure, succession plans. Kill me, and someone else takes over. Someone less understanding than I am. Let them, Kira said. We're taking over. Mercer and Volkov united. Your territory plus his resources. A new organization that neither of your families would recognize. Ambitious. Alexei's tone was almost approving. But naive. The captains won't follow you. The soldiers won't accept Mercer leadership. You'll have a civil war on your hands within a week. Then we'll fight it, and win. Cade's hand found Kira's, their fingers lacing together. Because we have something you never did. We have each other. And we're fighting for something more than power and money. Love, Alexei said it with contempt. You're fighting for love. How poetic, how useless. Not useless, motivating. Kira's weapon never wavered. I couldn't pull the trigger on Cade because I saw him as human, as someone worth saving, worth choosing. But you? She met Alexei's eyes. I've been dreaming about this shot for 3 weeks. Have you? Alexei took another step. He was close enough now that she couldn't miss. Close enough that even a civilian could make the shot. Then do it, Kira Mikhailovna. Pull the trigger. Kill the only father you've ever known. End 18 years of protection and purpose. Become the traitor you've been pretending not to be. Her finger tightened on the trigger. This was it, the moment she'd been building toward since that first hesitation on the balcony. Since the first time she'd watched Cade be human and felt something crack inside her. All she had to do was squeeze. 3 pounds of pressure, that's all. Kira, Cade said quietly beside her, you don't have to do this. We can take him alive. Use him for intelligence, leverage. You don't have to." "Yes, I do." Her voice was steady. "For me. For every child he's taken and broken. For 18 years of being a weapon. For freedom." "Then I'm with you." Cade's hand squeezed hers. "Whatever you choose." Alexei watched them both, and for the first time she saw something in his eyes that might have been sadness. "I did care," he said softly, "in my way. You were my greatest achievement, my legacy. I wanted you to be perfect. I was never going to be perfect." Kira's eyes burned, but she wouldn't cry. Not for him. Not anymore. Because perfect meant empty. And I'm not empty. Not anymore. "No," Alexei smiled. "You're not. You're human. Flawed. Weak. Everything I tried to train out of you." He took one final step. "So prove it. Show me you're human, not weapon. Pull that trigger, Kira. Kill me. Become exactly what you claim to hate." The logic was twisted, circular, designed to trap her in impossible choice. But Kira had been trapped her entire life. In debt her parents created. In training she never chose. In contracts that reduced humans to targets and morality to performance metrics. She was done being trapped. "I'm not doing this because I hate you," she said. "I'm doing this because I choose to. Because staying with you means going back to being the ghost. And she's dead now. I killed her the moment I let Cade live." She fired. 3 shots. Center mass. Professional. Clean. Exactly the way she'd been trained. Alexei stumbled back. His hand moved toward his hidden weapon, but he was already dying. Already done. He looked at her one final time, and his expression was almost proud. "There's my girl," he said in Russian. "My perfect weapon." Then he collapsed. Kira stood there, weapon still raised, hands finally shaking. The man who'd defined her existence for 18 years was bleeding out on expensive carpet, and she felt nothing, everything. Grief and relief and horror and freedom all tangled together into something she couldn't name. Cade's arms came around her. "It's done. It's over." "Is it?" Her voice sounded distant to her own ears. "I just killed the only family I had. You just freed yourself from your abuser." He turned her to face him, made her look at him instead of the body. "You chose life over death, freedom over chains. You chose yourself. I chose you. You chose both." His forehead pressed to hers. "And I choose you right back every time, no matter what." Somewhere in the building, alarms started blaring. The gunshots had triggered security protocols. They had minutes, maybe less, before the building locked down completely. "We need to move," Cade said. "Kira, look at me. We need to move now." She blinked, focused, the training taking over even as her emotions spiraled. "Extraction," she said. "Loading dock. Same way you came in." "Can you walk?" "I can run." They ran. Down the hallway, past the bodies of guards she'd killed. Into the stairwell as elevators locked down. 42 floors at a dead sprint, weapons drawn, ready for resistance that never came. Alexei's death had paralyzed the security system. No central command. No one giving orders. Just chaos. Exactly what they needed. They burst out of the loading dock at 4:17 a.m. Marcus was there, engine running, passenger door open. 3 minutes over, Marcus said as they piled in. "Thought I'd lost you." "Not yet," Cade said. "Drive. Fast. Get us the hell out of Canada." Marcus drove. Kira sat in the back seat, Cade's arm around her shoulders, and watched Vancouver disappear in the rearview mirror. She'd walked into that building as the ghost. She walked out as Kira. No contract, no handler, no purpose except the one she chose. It felt like falling and flying at the same time. "What happens now?" she asked as they crossed back into U.S. territory, using different fake IDs, different story, different people than when they'd arrived. "Now we consolidate power, deal with any Bratva captains who don't fall in line, merge the organizations like we planned." Cade's hand moved through her hair. "Now we build our empire." And after that? After that, we figure out who we are when we're not at war. We take that vacation I promised. We sleep for 12 hours. We eat food we didn't cook. He kissed her temple. We try being human instead of weapons. I don't know how to be human. Neither do I. But we'll learn together. His arms tightened around her. You and me. Partners. Equals. Whatever the hell we want to be. Kira closed her eyes. Let herself lean into him. Let herself trust that maybe, possibly, impossibly, this could work. They could work. Together, she whispered. Together, Cade agreed. And as they drove south toward Seattle, toward whatever future they were building from blood and choice and impossible hope, Kira Volkov let herself believe that she deserved this, deserved him, deserved a life that was hers, that the ghost was dead, and that whoever she became next would be her own creation. Not Alexei's, not the Bratva's, not anyone's but hers. For the first time in 18 years, Kira felt free, and it was terrifying and exhilarating and everything she'd never known she wanted. The war wasn't over. There would be more violence, more blood, more impossible choices as they built their empire from the ashes of 2 criminal organizations. But for now, in this moment, driving through the dawn with Cade's arms around her and freedom burning in her chest, she let herself rest, let herself hope, let herself be human, and started imagining what came next. Epilogue, a different kind of weapon. 6 months later, Kira woke to sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows and the smell of coffee. For a moment, just a moment, she thought she was back in that temporary apartment in Capitol Hill, back when she was still the ghost, still trying to figure out how to kill Cade Mercer. Then she felt the warm body beside her, the steady breathing, the arm draped possessively across her waist. And she remembered. She'd killed Alexei, she'd walked away from the Bratva. She'd chosen Cade and freedom and a life that was hers. And somehow, impossibly, it had worked. She turned carefully, not wanting to wake him, and studied his face in the morning light. 6 months together, and she still hadn't gotten used to this. To waking up next to someone. To having someone who looked at her like she mattered, not because of what she could do, but because of who she was. Cade's eyes opened, green and clear, and immediately focused on her. Morning, he murmured, his voice rough with sleep. Morning. She traced the scar along his jaw, the one from a knife fight when he was 17. She'd memorized every mark on his body over the past 6 months. Every scar, every story, every piece of him. How long have you been awake? About an hour. Didn't want to move and wake you. His hand moved up her back, under the t-shirt she'd stolen from him. You were sleeping so peacefully. First time in weeks. He was right. The nightmares had been constant since Vancouver. Alexei's face. Yuri's blood. The bodies of guards she'd killed without hesitation. Her mind processing 18 years of violence she'd never been allowed to grieve. But last night, for the first time, she'd slept through. What changed? Cade asked, reading her thoughts as he so often did. I don't know. Maybe I'm finally starting to believe this is real, that it's not going to disappear. It's not disappearing. Neither am I. He pulled her closer. You're stuck with me, Kira Volkov. Better get used to it. She smiled against his chest. I'm trying. 6 months. 6 months of consolidating power, of dealing with Bratva captains who'd challenged her authority, some with words, some with violence. All of them learning the hard way that the ghost was dead, but Kira Volkov was something far more dangerous. A woman who'd chosen her own path, who fought for what she'd built, not what she'd been told to protect. Marcus had been instrumental in the transition. His loyalty to Cade had extended to Kira, and slowly, the Mercer captains had fallen in line. Respect earned through competence and steel. The Bratva had been harder. Old loyalties died slowly. But Kira knew their operations better than anyone. Knew where the money flowed, where the bodies were buried, where every secret was kept. And she'd used that knowledge ruthlessly. 3 captains had challenged her directly. Only one had survived to tell others what happened when you tested Kira Volkov's patience. After that, resistance had evaporated. Now Mercer Volkov Enterprises controlled everything from Vancouver to San Francisco. Drugs, weapons, protection, money laundering. The entire supply chain, unified under their leadership. An empire built on blood and choice and two people who'd been weapons learning to be human. "What time is the meeting?" Kira asked. 11. "We have time." Cade's hand moved to her face, tilted it up so he could kiss her. Slow, thorough. The kind of kiss that said they had all morning, and he intended to use it. When they finally broke apart, both breathing harder, Kira traced his lower lip with her thumb. "I love you," she said. The words still felt foreign after a lifetime of not being allowed to feel anything, but she was getting better at saying them, at meaning them. "I love you too." He said it easily, like it was the simplest truth in the world. "Now, breakfast. Then we can strategize for the meeting with the Seattle City Council." The legitimate expansion. The legitimate expansion, he grinned. Who would have thought? Two crime bosses actually diversifying into legal businesses. It had been Kira's idea. Use their illegal profits to build legitimate enterprises. Real estate, tech startups, venture capital. Money that could be reported to the IRS without raising red flags. It wouldn't erase what they'd done, wouldn't absolve them of the violence and bloodshed that had built their empire. But it gave them options, room to maneuver, a path toward something that didn't end in prison or death. "Your mother would be proud," Kira said as they moved to the kitchen. "You're becoming an architect after all. Just building business empires instead of buildings." She'd be horrified at the methods. Cade cracked eggs into a pan. But yeah, she'd be proud of the result. Kira poured coffee, added cream to hers the way she'd learned she preferred. 6 months of having preferences, of being allowed to want things, of choosing. It was still surreal. "I got an email yesterday," she said after a moment, "from that self-defense instructor in Capitol Hill, the one who's retiring. And? She's offering me her studio. Said she's heard I have the skills to teach, that I should consider taking over her classes." Cade turned from the stove, spatula in hand. "Are you going to do it?" "I don't know. Teaching self-defense to civilians seems strange, after everything. Or it seems perfect. You spent 18 years using your skills to take lives. Now you could use them to protect lives, to give other women the tools to defend themselves." He plated the eggs, set them on the counter. "Plus, it's what you wanted, back when you were 8, to teach." He remembered. Of course he remembered. Cade remembered everything she told him, filed it away, brought it back when she needed reminding of who she wanted to be. "It's not exactly teaching literature to children," Kira said. "No, it's better. It's more you. The real you, not the ghost. Not the little girl who never got to grow up. The woman you're becoming." He kissed her forehead. "But it's your choice. Whatever you decide, I support it." Choice. He kept giving her that, kept offering options instead of orders. It was the most radical thing anyone had ever done for her. "I'll think about it," she said. They ate breakfast in comfortable silence. Then Kira showered while Cade laid out clothes for their meeting. A suit for him, a sleek black dress for her. Professional. Legitimate. The uniform of business people, not criminals. Though the weapons they'd carry, discreet, concealed, would tell a different story. At 10:30, Marcus arrived with the car. Torres rode shotgun, scanning the street with professional paranoia that never quite faded. "Morning, boss. Kira." Marcus nodded to them both. "Everything's set for the meeting," the councilwoman's office confirmed. "Her chief of staff will be there to discuss the development proposal." "Good." Cade settled into the back seat, Kira beside him. "Any issues we should know about?" "Nothing major. A few local business owners are nervous about our expansion into their neighborhood. We'll need to manage that carefully. Community outreach. Maybe some strategic donations to local causes." Kira's community center idea, Cade looked at her. She'd proposed it 3 months ago. Use their profits to build community centers in underserved neighborhoods. After-school programs. job training, resources for families who needed help. Legitimate good that also created goodwill and cover for their less legitimate operations. It's working well in the pilot location, Marcus confirmed. Enrollment is up, parents are happy, local politicians are starting to notice. Then we expand it, Kira said. 5 more centers by end of year, full programs. Real resources. That's going to cost. I know what it costs. Do it anyway. Her voice left no room for argument. We took enough from these communities. Time to give something back. Marcus nodded. Yes, ma'am. The meeting with the city councilwoman went smoothly. She was impressed by their proposal, intrigued by the community center initiative, and carefully avoided asking where their funding came from. Politicians understood selective blindness. By 1 p.m., they had preliminary approval for 3 new development projects. By 2, they were back in Cade's penthouse, both feeling the strange satisfaction of conducting business without anyone dying. Is this what normal feels like? Kira asked, kicking off her heels and collapsing onto the couch. I think so. Cade loosened his tie, poured them both whiskey. Boring meetings, paperwork, legitimate business negotiations. This is what civilians do. I'm not sure I'm built for civilian life. You're built for whatever you choose to be built for. He handed her the glass, settled beside her. 6 months ago, you were an assassin. Today, you're a businesswoman who just negotiated a multi-million-dollar development deal. Tomorrow, maybe you're a self-defense instructor. Next week, who knows? Next week, I'm still going to be me, the woman who's killed 49 people. 49. Yuri and Alexei had brought her total up by 2. The number sat heavy in her chest, always would, probably. 49 people, who were either targets or threats, Cade said. Not innocents, not civilians, people in the same business we were in. Does that make it better? No, but it makes it what it was. Survival, not murder. His hand found hers. And you're done with that now. No more contracts. No more kills, unless someone threatens what's ours. What if I miss it? The admission came quietly. What if part of me misses the simplicity of it? Target, elimination, contract complete. Then we find other outlets, the self-defense teaching, weapons training for our security teams, hell, competitive shooting if you want. He squeezed her hand. But you don't have to be the ghost anymore. You get to be Kira. All the parts of Kira, including the parts that are still figuring out who she is. They sat there as the afternoon faded into evening, drinking whiskey and watching the city lights come on below them. This life they'd built, violent and legitimate, criminal and normal, all tangled together, was imperfect, complicated, sometimes terrifying. But it was theirs. At 7, Kira's phone buzzed, text from an unknown number. Her heart stopped, old instincts screaming danger. Then she read the message and laughed. What? Cade asked. It's from Sarah. You remember, the woman who was supposed to be Matt's chosen in that insane ritual at Barrington? She showed him the screen. She's asking if we want to have dinner sometime. Says she and Gunnar, that's Riot's brother, are visiting Seattle next month. Friends. You're making friends. Apparently. Kira stared at the message like it was written in a foreign language. Is that allowed? Allowed? Cade laughed. Kira, you're not in the Bratva anymore. You can have friends. You can have dinner with people who aren't targets or assets. You can have a life. She typed a response. Yes, would love to. Let me know when you're in town. Then she set down the phone and looked at Cade, really looked at him. This man who'd been her target, who'd let her live when he should have killed her, who'd stood beside her through violence and transformation and building something impossible. This man who loved her, weapons and all. Come here, she said. He came. She kissed him, deep, thorough, full of 6 months of gratitude and hope and impossible love. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, she rested her forehead against his. Thank you, she said. For what? For seeing me. For not pulling your trigger. For giving me this. She gestured at the penthouse, the city beyond, the life they'd built. for giving me choice. You gave yourself choice. I just provided the option. His hands framed her face. But I'll keep providing options for the rest of our lives if that's what you want. What I want, Kira said slowly, testing the words, is you, this, us, whatever we're building together. An empire. A life. Both. He smiled. We're complicated people. We get to have complicated things. They made love as the sun set over Seattle, slow and tender and real. Not the desperate coupling of people who thought they might die tomorrow, but the deliberate connection of people who had tomorrow, and the day after, and years stretching ahead. Later, lying in the darkness with Cade's arm around her and the city glowing beyond the windows, Kira thought about the 8-year-old girl whose parents had sold her. That girl had wanted to be a teacher, had wanted to matter, had wanted to be safe. She'd gotten none of those things. Instead, she'd been turned into a weapon, had spent 18 years killing strangers, had learned to be empty and cold and perfect. But that girl, that weapon, had died. And Kira Volkov had been born from the ashes. She wasn't a teacher, wasn't safe, wasn't anything close to what that 8-year-old had dreamed. But she mattered, had choices, had someone who loved her for who she was, not what she could do. Had a future that was hers. What are you thinking about? Cade's voice was drowsy in the darkness. The future. Good thoughts? Complicated thoughts. She turned to face him. We're going to have problems. Rivals who challenge us. Authorities who investigate us. Our own demons that won't stay buried. Probably. We might fail. Might lose everything we've built. Possibly. We might destroy each other, might not survive what we've become. Maybe. He pulled her closer. Or maybe we'll be fine. Maybe we'll build something that lasts. Maybe we'll figure out how to be human and still survive in this world. His mouth found hers in the dark. But whatever happens, we do it together. Together, Kira agreed. And as she drifted off to sleep, peaceful, dreamless, free, she thought about the rifle stored in the back of their closet. Clean, maintained, ready if needed. But gathering dust. Because the ghost was dead. And Kira Volkov had better things to do than kill people. Like live. Like love. Like choose every single day who she wanted to be. And she chose this. Chose him. Chose freedom. The crosshairs that had defined her life for 18 years had finally, mercifully, moved away from targets she couldn't save, and settled on a future she might actually want to live. The end.